Hello and welcome to episode 196 of The Imperial Truth. My name's Greg, and joining me, as usual, is Mr. Howard.
Hello, Greg. How are you doing on this very exciting day?
I might have to explain that to the new listener. You're not Mr. Howard, you are Howard. It's just an affectation, the way I speak. So, yeah, it's Howard. I'm doing fine. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Thank you. Not bad. Surviving
Awesome.
yet another round of heat wave, and but that gives us plenty of time to do plenty of reading.
In theory, we're going to do a different show. I'm sure you all guessed for this show. We're going to skip all the news, the whatevers. We will shout out Element Games. You can purchase your Saturnine box, so you can purchase your Mark II Marines and your books and everything, and glue, and then all your other game systems as well that are all pretty awesome, and your dice and your card games and your board games and your airbrushes and your Neil Hollis paint sessions as well
Oh
through
yes,
Artist
yes.
Opus and that down in London, which is pretty cool actually. Neil's pretty excited about it, I think. So you can do all that through Element Games, and you can do that and support the show by using our affiliate link, which you can find in the show notes on the socials. And if you can't find it, ask and I'll put it up. But it's in our link tree and things like that as well. So yeah, Element Games, thank you for being a cool sponsor. Right, we are just going to dive in. Saturnine. We got sent the box early by GW, which means we've got a physical copy of the rulebook, which I've got in my house. And then we got access to the libers that are coming out and the drop site massacre as well. We got PDFs that we were allowed to look at for a little bit, which is awesome. Allows us to try and get a good look to get this episode out with some vague idea of what's going on with the new system. I will say, we didn't have a huge amount of time with it. You've got two kids. I've got one kid and had a busy time these last couple of weeks with like going out for social engagements and crazy things like that, which doesn't normally happen. So yeah, it's been I haven't got to play it yet because also Howard and I live a distance enough away that it makes it difficult to do, particularly with having kids, to meet up. So I haven't been able to play anyone, but I have got a game coming up Tuesday. So hopefully by the time we record next, we can have a little look at how the game actually plays on the tabletop.
Love exciting.
Um,
What's the game?
Horus Heresy, um, just a
I was
club game.
worried. I thought as soon as I said it, I thought he's going to go for this, isn't he? Yeah.
Well,
What
what do you
more
think the game is?
specifically, and to be more
Oh,
specifically?
we haven't. That is far off in the distance.
Oh right,
I
fair enough.
did start to write a Space Wolf Army, but literally I didn't have my book on me at the time, so I couldn't remember what was required and what was there. I had the Liber, but without the rule book, and we'll get into a reason why that later. Why that
Okay,
is
yeah.
not ideal. I think
Speaking
there'll be
to that.
solutions coming for that.
Speaking to your point there about sort of what was sort of laid out in front of us. I mean, when that arrived, which as you say, it wasn't that long ago. Um, I don't know about you. I was genuinely found it a little daunting, actually, the volume of it. And I've seen some others touch on this when they've been doing the articles and things, talking about what's in these and the kind of sense of what this is. But I mean, as a day one package of stuff, the rule book is chunky. It's a crunchy game, and I thought the roundtable, which I'm sure we'll touch on later, those roundtable discussions that the designers and rules writers and co put on there, they did mention there that they've taken this opportunity to kind of really separate the game, or not separate, but sort of help identify the game as a crunchy one relative to the other Warhammer games. It did come across just seeing the levers in the rulebook and so laid out, and then just sort of flicking through them, thought, oh yeah, this is quite the daunting volume of stuff. I don't know if you felt that. I don't remember feeling like that previously. I mean, that might probably says a lot more about my particular stage of life that I'm at, but
There are
um,
there are a few times when GW has changed a game big enough to warrant the amount of information we've had. They have done it, like 40k. The when they changed 40k to 8th, potentially when they changed it to, what was it, 9th, when they had to then re-put out the what you call
The
them,
indexes. Yeah.
the indexes. That's the term. So index hammer. Those times are few, relatively few. They're not. That wasn't that long ago, and there are some other examples. But in reality, this amount of information
Yeah.
is rare to be dropped all at once, and we've got more. We don't have access to any of the PDFs that are
Legacy.
coming,
Yeah.
the
Legacy
legacies,
PDFs, the militia, those various things. Yeah.
the custodies,
Oh yeah.
that kind of thing. So there is even more information to come. Um, Even when they did it back in the day, I mean, obviously Warhammer was much smaller back then, but when Warhammer Fantasy reduxed, armies of what fantasy was a small book, and
Yeah.
it just had stat lines in it and special rules basically, wasn't background and other things like that as well. Yeah, so there is there's a lot going on
Yeah.
within this.
It's certainly it's a formidable volume of information and a kind of as a thing to kind of get your head around. And I think sort of taking on a new edition of something, particularly one which I think has been some sort of mechanical adjustments to this, and you kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
you want to treat it like a clean slate. Otherwise, you're bringing your preconceptions or you're bringing your thoughts that the things that you've half remembered from a previous edition. You start getting them confused, let alone
sure.
cross games. So yeah, I certainly just wanted to sort of touch on that sense of there's a lot here. I want to do it justice, but this is quite hard. I think just to
It's
get your head into this amount
We
of
are in
information.
a slightly different position to most people. There are people who've got this book who will be full-time content creators,
True.
and the box as well. Don't forget we got the box and the books. And I don't know how you're doing with it. We'll talk about the models in a bit. But I'm a slow hobbyist, and as I said, around kids and whatever, time is limited, and family commitments and things like that. So I didn't have the opportunity to sit in a studio and spend a day getting to grips with all this and building models or anything like that. And we're trying to do this in our free time. Also trying to hit a release date. We didn't have to get this out on opening day, but we want to try. If I do, I'm sure I will. But this is going to be the first part, and we're probably not going to get into the levers too much today because just don't have time. By the time we end up recording this, it'll be straight to bed, not enough sleep, get up tomorrow, go to work, and you
And
do a
the
job
lever.
where your brain needs to be engaged, and I do a job where I'm driving all day. Um, neither are conducive. Lack of sleep is not conducive to either of those jobs. So we have to be sensible within that, but we're trying what we can,
Yeah.
and it is, as I say, a lot of info. Um, they stated that they early on. They stated that it's the game you all knew and love. Um, there are definitely elements of a game we all know, and whether you loved it or not is a different thing. But it's quite a different game in many
Mm,
ways,
mm,
um, and as I say, there's a lot because of the nature of those differences. Every single army entry is different. So when it comes to looking at an army, it's like, well, okay, I need to double check what this does. I need to double check. Oh, that's got that rule. Okay, what does that mean in this edition? Because is shreds changed completely? Like it's not. Some of the rules are like, oh, it works similar to last edition, and some of them are like, oh no, that works different now. And as you say,
mm.
you then add on to that edition bleed where you're remembering. I still think, oh yeah, you can do this in 40k, and I'm like, oh no, that was a third edition rule,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
which is slightly different now. But due to design language, trying to make the game feel similar, it's similar enough that you can think, should I be allowed to do that? So yeah, there's a lot going on. not necessarily helped for a veteran gamer, I believe, by the way they've written the book. Controversial.
Interesting.
Uh,
Yeah.
so
Expand, please.
there is there's a few things I want to say before we get um, into us talking about the books. Specialist Design Studios have made a number of games: Blood Bowl, Titanicus, Old World, um, uh, whatever. Then we've got Lord of the Rings alongside it. 40K's changed a lot over the last few years. They're aware of all these different game systems. They make some of these game systems or write some of these game systems. There are Imperialis, etc. Uh, there are terminology which cross across those games without necessarily meaning the same thing. There
Mm,
are rules that cross those games that don't necessarily mean the same thing. Sometimes they do. There are inspirations from rules across those games. I saw someone talk about this being 40Kified, and my first thought when I read there are certain parts of this book where I go, that feels like the old world. That feels like Titanicus. That little bit
okay.
reminds me of something else. I can't remember exactly which bits were Titanicus, but there were aspects. Oh, shooting blast weapons. Like,
Mm,
I'm not, it's very simple to say, oh, they've stolen this from that game system. Well, it's all in the melting pot, right? They've obviously decided to sit down with this. It was a long time ago, pre-second edition, as before it's even released, they were working on Saturn IX Terminators, for the next box, and how long after that they started working on all of this, I don't know, but I'm not privileged to that information. But I can definitely see, they've got a big, I say they got a big melting pot of rules and systems and whatever, and they're very happy to reach into that now and go, you know what could work well here? We do this thing in old well, but we can just tweak that and make that work in this. Gone are the days of, I don't even think it was really that true of, or Age of Sigmar's the testing bed for 40K. Um, uh, 40K definitely took for Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar definitely took for 40K. Now it feels like everything's fair game. And on top of that, there's only so many ways to write rules. Like no matter
mm,
the game
mm,
system, no matter what company is doing it. So if you've got something that works, you can believe that in. But there definitely feels like this book has tried to make use of whatever works and where that's come from. It feels like there are influences from all over SDS and GW as a whole within this book for me
mm,
for the
mm,
base rules. On top of that, one thing that feels very much like Titanicus and Legions Imperialis, I can't remember our world because I only read it once. It feels like this book is laid out for a brand new person to read.
mm, mm,
And once I've read like a two whole page piece about, the steps of how to shoot or how to fight in combat, like the initiative steps in combat, right? There's, it feels like half a page written about how to work out initiative steps. Guy, put the people into here, right? Once you've read that and once you've played a game, if you're a veteran coming back, if you've only played a year, you can ignore all of that, what that says, and you can go, right, with modifiers, who's initiative step 10? Cool. No one. What's your highest? 7. Cool. That's higher than mine. He's going first. And they've written the rule in such a way to try and make it really distinct and clear. Okay, start initiative 10, then go to initiative 9, and what have you. Not saying this is exactly how it works, off the top of my head. In reality, you don't do that.
mm,
Like
mm,
once you play the game, you might do it the first time you play a game, so you understand. But a reasonably intelligent person, even doing that the first time, will quickly go, "Oh, okay, right. What initiatives have you got? I've got a 4, a 3, and the rest are all ones. Okay, cool. Well, I've got a 5, and the rest of mine are all threes. So okay, cool. We'll do that then. You know,
mm,
it
mm,
speeds up and reduces a lot of this. But I understand why they worded it like that. Titanicus was like this. when you were learning how to play Titanicus, the book was really good. As soon as you knew how to play Titanicus, the book was awful. Awful, strong word,
Mm,
but
mm,
frustrating. Oh, where's this rule? Oh, it's over there. Oh, okay. Why can't this? Why aren't these rules here? It's like, okay, because they're done as you appear across them when you're playing the game and learning the game. Okay, cool. But I never need to look at movement anymore. I know how movement works. I just need to maybe double check when I boost my turns exactly when that's done. That kind of thing. So I feel very much that they tried to write a game here that can't try to write the systems and the rules in a way that can't be bent to advantage, and therefore there's a lot of words used. I don't necessarily
mm,
think there are a lot of them are that complicated. They're just every aspect, like say the combat phase, like how many phases are sub phases are there for the combat phase? Like everything is um, broken down into all these sub phases, which make things clear as to when and how they should happen.
mm,
But once you're in there, say once you know the game, so there are 10 steps to the combat phase. Bear with me. Are there, or is it more the fight phase? Ah, there are 5 steps to the fight phase. They are broken down into the resolving initiative steps as the 10 steps redone, and then you get to the end where there are 4 steps in the combat resolution phase.
mm,
Like
mm,
there's a lot of sub phases,
mm,
and, and and then the end phase has 4 different. Like there are 4 different phases after that as well, after the aftermath, because you've got the end
mm.
phase, the effect sub phase, the status sub phase, and then the victory sub phase. So yeah, yeah, 3 sub phases in the end phase as well. Like there's a lot of phases, but learning the game, like you should know when things occur. I
Well,
don't know if
exactly.
you.
I was thinking that. I wonder if that's partly what's kind of driven that design decision to present this. I mean, I think there's generally a move with Games Workshop. I think they've got far better at onboarding people into the game.
Mm,
Something that I think was much harder before, and it went through particular periods where it was daunting for anyone to turn and take this on. Now this is a much crunchier game, as I use that term, as in it's sort of I mean, you just described it there. I mean, it goes to a level of detail. It's not quite Necromunda in sort of a skirmish game style thing, but it's got a lot to it relative to some more simplified things which are have a different kind of emphasis on what the type of game is. That's that desire for clarity, that desire for order, and having something where the timing is very clear, for example, which is often what trips a lot of these kinds of rules descriptions up, might also have led to a right, because of the level of complexity of this, we need to treat this. We need to think about how we're going to explain this from the get go, as if we're treating this to new people. So I wonder if there's a number of reasons why they've kind of, a number of influences why it's sort of focused on being an easier access, if you like, or laying it out in such a way that makes it there. I like it. I think there's a level of clarity to it that allows you to get your head into it and around it quite
it's
well,
got
taking on something that's very complex.
it's got positives and negatives, right? Like so, in second edition, when you deflagrate, when did deflagrate happen? Like there was always a bit of a like discussion,
Mm, mm,
because you could argue for 2 different bits, but in here it's resolved at the end of after I think it's resolved at the end of step 9, making saving throws and damage mitigation tests. Before you move on to the next fire group, you then do your deflagration. So it's very clear when that's happening. It allows you to do that. It allows you to put in rules that are very specific. And as I say, at any point you can be like, oh, what do we do next? Okay, cool. We're on step 7 of this. What
mm,
happens in
mm.
step 7? Okay, as you get better, more used to the game system, your knowledge increases. You start to, you start to mush some of these groups together. You know, okay, I don't need to do that and that. Like, you know, check target, declare weapons, choose target, check target. Like, that, you know, are they two distinct phases? You don't sit there and like work like that, do you? That's not how human beings work. Um, you you kind of you push through it. As you say, you don't check every initiative phase in combat. When you know there's only 2 units in that combat, you just ask, what's your initiative with the weapons
Mm.
you've got. Obviously there could be lots of different initiatives with 1 unit in combat, but that is just the beast. The problem, I think, the solution to some of the problems that this causes, which is usually looking stuff up, is cheat sheets.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
and someone needs to or someone will go out and make, here are all these rules, here are, in one easy to getting rid of the bits that you don't need. Like, once you know how to set fire groups, which is basically collecting all the weapons of the same weapon skill, all the same weapons with the same weapon skill or ballistic skill together, that's all it means. um, you don't need to look at that again, that kind of thing.
Mm.
So again, that's another 2 paragraphs removed from the shooting step, um, kind of thing. But what that does do, and I thought they, as I was reading through it, I thought, oh, okay, here, so this is very clear because it used to be like back in the day with 40k, long fangs were the pretty much the only unit that could split fire and choose to shoot different targets. So when later on in the rules other units could do that, I regularly see people saying, "Okay, I'm going to find my las cannon over here and roll for it," and then, "Oh, and this las cannon over here," and it's like, "No, no, 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 no. You declare all your targets." It's like, "Do
Mm.
I?" So because they never use it before. So Space Wolf had done it for years. It's like, "Yep, that's how." And if you go back and read it, yeah, you always choose your targets first, so you don't know if you've blown something up, blah blah blah. And looking through this, it was like, okay, cool. You select all your targets and then you've got to fire them. I was like, oh, cool. So you can't just leave your plasma guns till the end because you think you might not need them and therefore not have to risk, blowing yourself up. But actually, if you kill all your, later on, if you kill all your enemy, then you don't have to carry on with other fire groups. So you can still do that, but but it's clear again. We're labouring a point there. It is. I think it probably is good for a newer player,
Yes,
but
I
what it
would agree
leads
with that.
to is lots of words. And as I say, sometimes I think with maybe like psychic powers and reactions, it's like the target and the um whatever the other wording is on those. Like sometimes you can read that and be like, hold on, which one's the target again? But
Yeah.
that's, you just got to read the rule carefully. Which the reactive player? Oh, the target, the player's control. Okay. Um, it is what it is. I think sometimes, yeah, you just got to take your time reading some of those. Cool. Before we do this, actually, because that was my little note on just the books. Before we get into the books, you want to talk about the models?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Sounds good.
we split the box up. I chose the big dread, and I got 3 Saturnine and some Mark II, and you got everything else: the 2 characters, the Arachne, and 3 of the Saturnine and some Mark II. How were your experiences?
I'm going to say mixed, which I'm
Cool.
surprised that I'm saying that, given contemporary design of Games Workshop kits in particular, working with all of those, have done for many years, and the plastic kits in general, the engineering that's gone into them and the design work that's gone into them has just gone from strength to strength. Um, they're perhaps not the pinnacle when you compare to certain other plastic kits, but they're for what they are excellent. I found the most of the kits normally go together like an absolute dream, but particularly character kits of sort of leader characters and similar tend to have got more complex, and which has allowed them to do more elaborate posing, for example, or more elaborate detail, whatever it might be, or combination thereof. I found the Mark II Centurion in this set, which was probably the model I was looking forward to the most because I think it's one of the most characterful that
Yeah.
they've put out. It's just drips sort of a heresy aesthetic. I was really looking forward to putting that model together, and for the most part, it went together like an absolute dream. The bit that didn't was the cloak that went on the back. And I've heard people say these about some of these various other kits that they've done, where it's not entirely either not clear, or even if it is clear, you don't necessarily agree with it about how certain parts come together in a certain sequence. So it's not
Sure.
super obvious necessarily how various bits come together. So you do need the instructions. And I would say these characters are similar to that. Whereas, compare that with the Mark II regular tactical Marines, those you can almost, once you've done one, you've kind of got the gist and you can put them together almost in your sleep kind of thing. This is not the case with the character. And the cloak in particular. The cloak comes in three parts. You've got two kind of clasps that are attach it to where it's attached to his pauldrons. There's the clasp itself, and then a bit of cloak that goes up to the sort of apex of the shoulder, and then the rest of the cloak is a separate piece that flows down behind that. That integrates with the backpack. Trying to get that onto the model, either following the instructions or indeed just trying to get it to work anyway, was an absolute nightmare. I was doing it late at night, admittedly, so it might be that I was tired, but trying to get that to fit was incredibly difficult. And even when I did get it to fit, you end up either with sort of gaps, and I was using the kind of technique much like you did with the Mark Six split shoulder pads, where you put a bit of glue on both sides, press it together, and you end up with a sort of bit of glue squidging out. But that's on folded material. So sanding that down a bit, again, a bit like the studded shoulder pad, is not the most straightforward thing. So I just found that particularly tricky. That said, the rest of it went together incredibly well. It's still an incredibly characterful piece. The Mark II Marines went together just as easily as the Mark VI did before. Um, they're numbered sensibly, and I think they look great. I think they're dripping with character. And the big gun was cool as well. A very technical kit, far more articulation in it than I was expecting. You can almost treat it a bit like a little drop pod with the art of the legs that manipulate out. And I think that's going to make a cool scenery piece, even if you're not using it in game. So yeah, I was quite pleased. The Saturnine Terminators are certainly something. They are. I wasn't super convinced. I've never been a Saturnine super fan, really, as the overall aesthetic, but I was quite. When we saw the models revealed in more detail, they did start to win me round. And seeing them and having them in hand, I kind of continue with that. There's a lot to them. There's a lot of pieces going on there. I found posing the legs quite difficult, trying to get
Hmm.
that to a sensible striding pose. Particularly when I suddenly realised that the notches that are in the knee, if you set, for example, if you set both legs to the center notch, they don't necessarily pair. The instructions again are quite clear on that. You just have to kind of read them. And the fact that there's much articulation in it, like the front and the back of the foot are separate pieces, so they articulate differently. You just got to think through quite a few bits there. But I think once you've done one, I think you'd be well away.
Yeah, my toes are a little bit pointy up, but that's fine.
Yeah, I had a couple of
That's
bits
fine.
of that like that, but yeah, he looked like he was sort of mid trip, which I didn't wasn't ideal. But overall, not bad. What were your thoughts?
Um, oh, so sorry, you had the other Praetor as well, the Centuri, the
Yeah, I haven't
Saturnine Praetor.
tackled him yet.
Okay,
He,
so
he he's still,
I was
on the bench because of a couple of things there.
I was like, okay, I'm going to get one of them from someone else until I had a look at the sprue and was like, oh, only two legs. So the conversion done of the coolest looking Saturnine dude is like it's a chop the leg repose or use another Saturnine Terminator. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, yeah, cool. I'm not a fan of the um, stretchy leg pose, foot up on a chair, hot sweaty day pose. Um, so I was like, yeah, cool, that can go. Right, and I will figure one out at some point. Maybe I will buy one to convert with a regular Saturnine dude. And because I really like the idea of the axe. I think it looks awesome, but I'm
Yeah,
not
I
doing
certainly
that.
prefer that. I found the the hammer has just gone too far for my.
Yeah,
It's too extreme. It looks like something out of a video game, out of a World of Warcraft style thing. It's turned up to 11, and not in a way I particularly enjoy.
sure.
The axe, however, which is similarly fairly insane, just stays on the right side of it for me because he's kind of got that slightly meaner somehow pose going on. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the cooler of the two
I've
options.
just picked up my Saturnine Terminator and looking at it, realised that there we go, it did come off good. I got one of the shoulder pads ever so slightly wrong. It was a little bit lopsided. I will have to glue that back on and hope that fits properly when I do so. There we go, that'll be better. Okay, let's put that on the side. Okay, so if you think Saturnine Terminators have a lot of parts and a lot going on, I think the Dreadnought officially has like 164 parts.
Whoa.
Obviously, you don't use them all, but yeah, there's a lot. So the feet, again, the four parts of the foot are all like you can move them around a bit.
Mhm.
So trying to work out how they wanted to be before you put them down, I was like, I'm just going for flat. There is
Hmm.
a little bit of movement in the posing on the arms and the hips, like there's lugs, but with a space to go in rather than a slot, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
Um, it took a while to put together. I thought, I'll turn his head ever so slightly, and then I can have one arm just shooting slightly across the body and one arm, slightly angled out. But the way where the guns, the back of the guns where it's thick on the disintegrator, wherever it is, and then the fact that the plasma is thick anyway, means that you can't actually turn those guns too far out because the back is hitting the top of the thigh part of that model.
Right.
So pose wise, limited without doing some work. I'm sure people
Mhm.
can do the work, don't get me wrong. I'm not. But I like it. I mean, I've liked this model anyway. I think it's pretty awesome. It's a
Yes.
chunk, and need to get some paint on that. But yeah, a lot of parts. Like you're building stuff, thinking, "Oh, that looks cool," and that will never be seen because it's under the shield generators. Oh, this is cool, and that will never be seen because it's the hair. Oh, yes, there's a lot of that going on with the model.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry when you're looking at bits of it too
I
much. Like
think
all the
I'd say that's
framework.
similar with the Terminators because
Yeah,
I
it's
actually
just
quite like them without the supersized shoulder pads. The sort of under shoulder pad I thought looked quite cool.
mm, yeah, not for me. I can see why. I feel like they're lacking something. If you'd extended that
Oh yeah.
shoulder pad out, maybe.
Oh, I agree. I
Yeah,
don't mean as a finished model, but I
yeah.
think it's interesting to see it when it's scaled down. I wonder if
There
you
are
might see
options.
people having a go making smaller versions of the shoulder pad.
Yeah, so interestingly, because I saw that the only other Saturnine Terminators that I like, done by Wilf, I think Wilf's been shut down by GW, so they're not available anymore. So yeah, it's GW on nothing on those. See if I want them in the game, I suppose. And then the Mark II, uh, they're based on the Mark VI and the Mark III in terms of their those three poses, which means you can mix and match loads of different stuff. They're cool.
Mm,
They've made a subtle change to the legs so they're not that overlapping plate, but I don't think it matters too much. They're almost just banded instead,
mm,
and on 20 guys that are sat on the table doesn't make much difference. I did get my trusty pin vise out when I got my couple of disintegrator weapons on them and thought time to do some barrels. Looked at the barrels and thought, yeah, I'm not bothering on these guys. I'll do it on bolt guns, but I'm not bothering on these guys. I think the models are cool. I think the box is cool.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think they've done a good job.
I think it's
Chunk
interesting
of
that
chunk of
they
plastic.
chose. I think it's interesting they chose Saturnine Terminators and Dreadnought for the box. I thought that was an interesting choice. I'm slightly surprised because I would have said they were slightly more niche, but they clearly had a lot of faith in them, in being highly popular, so kind of went for it.
Well, one, they're new, and two, they're new to heresy, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
one, they're something that is, yes, we have seen images, but they're brand new as a model concept. But two, no other heresy player owns them. So they're putting something in a box. Two, Second Ed had a good box. Plastic Spartan, brilliant. Plastic,
Mm-hmm.
some Terminators and blah blah blah, really good deal. But this has got stuff that you've never seen before, and it's the first place to get it. So you are going to sell based off that, I think. And
Yeah.
then people want Mark II anyway. So yeah, a lot of people are not bothered with the Arachne, but I quite like it. But yes, there we go. Okay, cool. Right, book.
Big book.
Oh, yeah, I haven't talked about the other bits. Yeah, tokens, cool. Measuring sticks, cool. Yeah, fine. Got more templates I can show you stick out. But that's because I've been playing these games for 30 years. So,
Mm.
not everyone's in the same boat as me. Okay. Rulebook. In my first note, before I went back and did that bit about the way they write the things, the first note I wrote was I like the clarification of everything right at the start of this.
Mm.
Again,
Mm.
I'm going to be looking for it all the time. I'm going to need sticky labels or something to put in here. But your model types are right there, page 174 of the rules start on 167 with your basic kind of characteristics and all that. But yeah, your core types are listed out there. Your paragons, walker, cavalry, automata. Then the subtypes: unique, command, champion, heavy, light, brilliant, skirmish, anti-grav, transport. Unit types, excellent, nice actually. I think nice to clarify it all.
Mm.
Nicely sorted out there. What was I going to say? I can't remember.
Just speaking while you think about that, just speaking to the overall structure of the book, it's a 350-page-ish book. Of that, 150-ish pages are context, are the lore of the
Yeah,
game and the setting.
which I haven't
So
read.
it's under half. I haven't read it. I've flicked through it. I think it's presented incredibly well, as one expects of a modern GW product like this. It's got all the sort of stylings of that. Well, sort of perhaps not quite the black books, but certainly got
No,
it's on a
it's that
par
middle
with. No,
ground.
it's not that, but it's on the par of the recent
Yeah.
specialist design studio
Yes.
products. Lots of cool color plates for both just describing what mark of armors are and what an overview, a 2-page overview of every legion. Great. All the sort of things you would usually expect. But 150 pages of context, including not just Space Marines, but also the other factions as well, including Titans, Demons, etc. And a timeline. Everyone loves a timeline and a big old map. Then you get just
Indeed.
under halfway, and it kicks off with the rules in the way that you're talking about, and it does it from a great blank slate starting point, which I think is the right thing to do, particularly when you're introducing changes to what changes. I think it is changes to stats.
Oh yeah, big time. Big time. Yeah, you're right. It's a fairly standard layout, that lore bit, but there's 18 legions plus everything else to cover.
Mm.
That's pretty expected. I think down the line we're going to be getting individual legion books, and maybe that will expand things. And then we'll be getting these regular, what are they called again? The Journal Tactica. So we're going to be getting regular of those, and that's where the law is going to be expanded even more, which is good to see. Very simple attack systems laid out right at the start, even before we get into the actual, the detailed section of it. The melee hit test, the ranged hit table was the first it's not the first major change because we got the cool leadership. We've done them. That's cool. We've got
Mm.
4 new stats for people who are new. Um, and they affect different things. Awesome. More design space. Really good idea. Hit tests was
I
interesting.
personally think that's a good move, that they've introduced that, and I think I've seen generally very positive responses to that. I think that, as you say, it opens up a
Yes.
huge range of options, and I think the extra complexity of it is negligible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's leadership's been broken out into 4 different tests, um,
Yeah.
and each rule specifically states which test. It's like there's nothing complicated about that,
Mm.
but it allows, as you say, a great design space not only in what can affect those rules, but also what units have different stats in those rules. The first real interesting change for me was the to hit rolls.
Mm.
So used to be, you hit on with shooting, you hit on 2s up to 6s. And in various iterations of Warhammer, if you had a really good ballistic skill, you'd get hit on a 2, and you could get a reroll if you were even higher ballistic skill than that. Well, they've changed things now. Once you go past ballistic skill 5 and you're hitting on a 2 plus, you then get a chance to critical hit with no matter what you're shooting. So, ballistic skill 6, if you roll a 6 to hit, not only have you hit, but you've scored a critical hit, which is
Mm.
pretty awesome. Like, okay, there's a reason to be ballistic skill 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If you're ballistic skill 10, you don't even have to roll to hit. It's
Yeah.
automatic. And it's a crit. So, brilliant. Like, again, 40k old world, Age of Sigmar. I've started to play. Did play around. Although 40k and Age of Sigmar got rid of this this style of how to write the rules. They started to play around with different things like this. But this hasn't been this kind of to hit table, particularly for shooting, hasn't really changed in 30 years. Very little. But this expands it to a point where actually is having ballistic skill 9 compared to ballistic skill 6 is a big difference, because
Mm.
critical hits are cool. On top of that, it affects your snapshots. Now, people have worked out that snap shooting is on a 5 plus. What they haven't worked out so far is that that's a basic ballistic skill of 4 or 5. If you're ballistic skill 7, you're snap shooting on a 4 plus. Ballistic skill 8, you're snap shooting on a 3 plus. So it's making your snapshots more reliable as well. So if you've got a way to boost your ballistic skill, you are going to be that much more effective at shooting.
Mm.
Again, you're getting more. They haven't changed the ballistic skill table in terms of it really, but they've got more out of it, which is a very sensible idea. And an example of the good things they've done in this game. They haven't changed like your wound test. If you're too weak, you cannot wound a tough thing. Like there's no 6 plus auto wounding. They're keeping aspects of that within the game, but they're expanding it on other sections. Should we talk tactical statuses?
Yes.
So they have covered these online. We've got 4 of them now. Pinned, suppressed, stunned, and routed. And they do different things. Pinned can't move a charge, and may not pursue or disengage. If you're suppressed, you must snap shoot. If you're stunned, you can't react. If you're routed, you're running away. But they have effects that affect you if you've got any of these. So, what's interesting is vehicles can have these as well. Not all of these tests are caused by being wounded, like some occur for different reasons. In fact, we'll
Mm.
get to that with vehicles later. But if you have any tactical status on you, your charges are all disordered, and disordered charges is pretty big change.
Mm.
What else is there? Your initiative is 1, regardless of your initiative characteristic, weapons, and modifiers. So if you have a status and you're locked in combat, it hurts. You cannot hold, claim, or contest an objective. Now that's big because there's a lot of different things that can give you a tactical status, and if we're going to be playing 4 turns like the missions are in here, then you haven't got that many turns to score. So
No.
being able to just suppress a unit and stop and turn off their scoring is possibly more advantageous than actually wounding models, that kind of thing, or stopping them shooting back. You may never gain any benefit from being stationary, so your heavy weapons are less effective, that kind of thing.
I like that one.
There we go. That's pretty much it. You can't get a status more than once. You've either got it or you haven't. But there we go. Yeah, and there's just vehicles and statuses. So on top of effective your shooting, there are potentially bigger effects just by being under a status, and that is going to be pretty big. Particularly, as I say, if people are playing 4-turn games, that's going to be an issue I'm going to talk about later on as well. But you know, if you can keep a few key units like stunned or suppressed or pinned, not only are you stopping them doing what they want them to do, but you're denying the opportunities to score as well. And bearing in mind, we will be looking at mainly at objective scoring, so that is pretty big, I feel. Reactions, reaction points. We've got a base reaction allotment of points. So most games probably going to be between 1,500 and 3,500. You're going to get +1 reaction point on top of your. Is it 2? Oh, blimey.
One.
It's 1 +1. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Have a base reaction allotment of 1. Yes, sorry, apologies. So each player term, you can have 1 plus whatever the battle limit says. So 2 for probably the majority of games. That's fewer overall than before. And the reactions have changed a bit as well. I think so. We've got core reactions, which they have again talked about. What have we got? Reposition. Yeah, says what it is. But you can move anywhere now, which is good. Return fire, which is cool. Overwatch, and then there are advanced ones for Death and Glory, Intercept, Evade, Nullify, Psychic Power, which is good to have, Heroic Intervention. So that's being able to make challenges outside of your turn. Nullify, stopping psychic powers that are targeted at you. Evade is volley attacks based. Yep. Intercept, stopping things coming on. Death and Glory vehicles. Yep. These are familiar to people who've played before. They're fairly straightforward, I feel. Then there's some good things to do in here, but also there are more reactions. So there are Legion specific reactions. There are reactions that are specific to model types. So in the Legion's book, like there are some reactions in there that you need certain things to be able to. They're only in that book, and they're written in such a way that they come into play depending on what you've got and what have you. It looks like these are still good, but less good than they were. I don't know actually.
I know. I think they are as good. I just think it's the limiting factor that you've got to be sure you want to use up your allowance, because it feels very precious. Even though there are, I think, going to be increasing numbers of ways when you start looking
So
at
if we think about
trade and stuff that are all
in second
characters
edition,
could
it was one per phase
Mm.
plus 1, wasn't it? So yeah,
Yeah.
And that's where I'm getting confused. But not only that, it was plus augury scanners for intercepts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's where I'm thinking. Apologies. Like reposition is categorically better than like the previous one of moving forwards and backwards. This is you can just move.
Yeah.
And carry on. So you can duck behind a wall sideways, or you can close at an angle, that kind of thing. There are ways of making some reactions cheaper as well
Yes.
later on, and the reactions don't necessarily have to cost 1 point either. So again, I think they're as good, if not better, because you've got more of them. The ability to have different price reactions is a good idea as well. Again, allows you to put in something that's very powerful but costly
You've still got
to
a
do.
relatively limited number as well. I mean, there's 8 here in this
Yes,
book, and there's only going to be so many. I mean, basically
there's
each
only like
legion's going to.
two. Yeah, I think there's 2 or 3 in the Space Marines book plus your Legion one. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
not like you're using them all the time. If the enemy doesn't bring a Psyker, guess what? You're not using the Psychic one, the
yeah.
Nullify one. If they don't have any flyers or deep striking units or reserves, you're not using Intercept. But yeah, you're still going to be having to remember these and when
Mm.
you use them and what you use them for as well, which is pretty cool. I think there are tough choices with them as well because I'm already looking at them thinking that again, if we're playing 4-turn games, the ability to move out of sequence becomes
Mm.
quite powerful. Obviously, it's a short range thing because it's only when they end within 12 inches of you, but it's again, like not everything in this game is about killing the enemy. So yeah, there are choices to be made on that. Cool.
I think that. Well, I mean,
Psychers.
I think that's worth. I think that's worth expanding a bit further because I think that's one of the major thrusts. I think of this edition, is that it's really making it so that it's not all about just out and out kill. I feel like they've doubled down on that. This idea of suppress and go for the mission, go for the victory points. I think that seems to be, as a design theme, seems to really run through this. The more I read it, particularly the more I read the unit rules and the missions and everything really. I think we're going to see a lot. I think as we play more games, we're going to see there's more of an emphasis on that. There's more encouragement. The rules facilitate more tactical type of gameplay rather than
Oh,
just shoot, and punch. I feel like they've leaned more into that and they've provided more tools for that. And I think the status is the reactions, the general unit rules, special rules, etc. I think lean into that to an extent.
yeah, they have to be a little bit careful that they don't just turn it into a move around stand on a piece of ground game
Mm.
and lose too much of the fighting because
Mm.
you can create a strange game doing that, and they have done it before with other games where it's lent a little bit too far that way.
Mm.
At the end of the game, it's still a war game, and you want units to be hitting each other, whether it's with guns or what have you. So that's cool. Uh, Psychic powers, yep, cool. Nice and straightforwards again. I think the perils of the warp table really, tightened up.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if you suffer a perils of the warp, you roll a dice. You either get stunned or you take some number of wounds. Where is it? Number of wounds inflicted is 13 minus the willpower characteristic of the model in the unit with the lowest willpower characteristic. Yeah, there's a lot of sentences like that, but you can't argue with it at the end of the day. So yeah, if it goes badly, 1 in 3 chance of taking some decent wounds. Um, but otherwise you're stunned, which again is not good as we talked about. So it's good to see that that's nice and fairly straightforward. Vehicles, they changed a bit.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, indeed.
Um, where are we? Where did you start with vehicles? So they can be repaired. There's quite a few things that can repair vehicles. They can quite a few can self-repair. I haven't checked all the vehicles, but you've also got the Battlesmith rule as well. This is the way you remove status effects from vehicles. Every successful repair roll can remove a status effect from a vehicle, which is pretty good. They can, one of the big ones, they can move through friendly and enemy units just as standard. Which, the enemy might be able to death and glory you, but the ability to speed up your movement to it's a hard thing, because in a crunchy game you want positioning to matter to a point, but there have to be certain abstracts to make a game flow. But models with the vehicle type do not impede, restrict, or limit the distance a model with the vehicle type may move. Models without the vehicle type, sorry. So vehicles can move through other units, so composed of models that do not have the vehicle type. Obviously, you can't end on them, can't end within 1 inch of an enemy unit, things like that. If you're moving through your own models, fine, it's cool, no problem at all. If you move through enemy models, you do D6 strength 6 hits with an AP of dash, so you don't have to ram anyone anymore, just do it. Yep. Obviously, they can death and glory reaction you, but that's a bonus to vehicles, but also a speeding up, less stuff getting stuck behind, not being able to use your tanks properly because you've got a slight positioning issue. Someone can't just deep strike 10 dudes to hem in, 2 Spartans, so you can't get out. So you can remove a few negative play experiences with that, which I think is a good idea. A really good idea. Where are we?
Vehicles and
You can,
shooting
you can
massively
target
changed.
loads of different units with your vehicles if you wish. But if you do, you are
Yeah,
snapshooting.
as snapshots, but snapshots aren't as negative as they once were.
No, I mean, most of the time it's probably going to be 5s still for Space
Yeah,
Marines, so it's not ideal. But if you are desperate,
no, it's
it can
not
be
fixes.
done.
Yeah,
If you're like, I really need to kill these 3 dreadnoughts, which are on their last, 2 wounds each, just so happens, then
yeah.
yeah, I will snapshot all my. And there might be vehicles which ignore snap shooting as well, like just don't suffer from it. But yeah, I don't know. So yeah, it's again lots of words there. This is why I'm kind of pausing on things a little bit at times, because it's trying to
I
find
found
the. Sorry, Karen.
I found the change to
Oh, sorry.
damage.
The one thing before you go on, the one thing that don't snap shoot when you fire multiple shots is defensive weapons. So if you do have a
Oh, really?
light vehicle with like loads of defensive weapons on it, then you can shoot all those at full ballistic skill,
Mm.
which
That that quite
make
compelling, I suppose.
yeah. So if you've got anti-infantry, like something that's got you've got a Bane Blade, maybe not because you've got the big weapons on it, but if you've got I'm trying to think of a Sikaran with sponsons on it, you might end up being able to shoot your turret weapon and your heavy bolters on the side, that kind of thing.
Mm.
So yeah, that's cool. Sorry, damage. You were talking damage. Let's move on to damage.
That was the one that I sort of found the most interesting, particularly in combination with these tactical statuses, because penetrating hits don't feel as it doesn't feel like you're going to get that sort of one-shot kill kind of scenario.
Unless you've
You
got a
can
massive
with the
weapon.
damage,
Yeah.
yeah, with the damage characteristics being what they are, it is possible, but it feels like more often than not,
But
you
it's
yeah,
really unlikely your Typhon's going to get blown up in one shot.
yeah, quite, yeah,
But your
because
Predator can. Fair.
yes, the lighter vehicles possibly can, but you're not going to get that unlucky moment where a very large vehicle goes bang. But I found the introduction of the tactical statuses and the repair roll being the only way to well, no, not the only way. The way to remove them generally is going to be via the repair roll. It really
Yeah.
does make you very tempted to have some units potentially that have the ability to help repair those, because I wonder. It's going to be really interesting to play it because, on the one hand, it feels like wow, advancing hits happen quite a lot. I thought and that's where you typically get those. That's where you get those statuses applied. And then once they're applied, it's quite likely they're staying there. Your
But not only
Kratos,
that,
you're gonna suddenly get hit with one of those status markers, and you think, oh, well, I'm now relying on rolling a 6. And I've only got 4 turns. You could have 3
yes.
turns of that thing being with that status for the rest of the game. So having some models with Battlesmith to really help lift that becomes quite appealing. But then on the other hand, are you going to get glancing hits that often, or is it more likely you're actually going to get penetrating hits?
Well, it's a tricky one. I was trying to work out if vehicles were more survivable now or or not, and they possibly are more survivable because you don't get those lucky hits.
Mm.
Well, they probably are, should I say? But when you glance and you do a stun status, if you glance again and roll a stun status, you now take a damage on top.
Mm.
So once you've taken a status, then that glancing roll becomes damage, becomes a penetrating hit. So those are going to add up. Glancing hits are going to add up as well. And bear in mind, penetrating hits are going through and doing damage anyway. Like, yes, you were taking one whole point off. So previously, glancing hits was a whole point. Penetrating hit, you take a whole point for sure, but 2/3 of the time you either can't move or can't shoot, or you're snap
Mm.
shooting. Well, now if you glance, you're putting a status on them. You're affecting their shooting. Vehicles are going to be on the table slightly longer, but are they going to be affecting the table
I agree
that
with that.
much?
That I
That
find interesting because when you were even with
transports maybe come out of that okay.
yes,
Yeah, so transports maybe, and then again, maybe there are vehicles, maybe there are vehicle rules. Haven't it's been a while since I looked back at those that maybe allow you to ignore certain effects of some of these. Um, it's a tricky one. I was going to go back and look at the statuses actually.
it's the fact
Yeah,
that those statuses are sticky. I mean, as you say, when
yes,
compared to the previous edition where it was only the next turn, and then your vehicle was going to be doing its thing the turn after that. The fact that this is going to stay there until it's repaired, and repairing it is quite hard to do without some kind of that makes me a little nervous of it. But actually, it's perhaps not going to happen that often because it's only on the glancing hit. If it was on the penetrating hit as well, if glancing hit was just the status and then the penetrating hit was damage and the status, I'd be very concerned because then I'd be thinking, wow, these statuses are going to be there all the time and your vehicles are going to be suppressed permanently in one way or another. But actually, I don't think that's going to be the case as it's only on the glancing hit.
I
I wonder if
suppose
that's a balancing factor.
so. They can be affected by all of them except for routed. So stunned means you can't react. Most of the time for vehicles, that's not necessarily a major issue.
Mm.
Suppressed means snap shooting. Obviously, for you got a big anti-tank gun or something like that. That's a pretty big one. Pinned is not moving. So actually, is a glancing status pinned, not just a penetrating hit rolling a may not move and shoot. Well, no, because you used to have both. You used to have 2 rolls of can't shoot, 1 roll of can't move and shoot, and then immobilized, weapon destroyed on the table. So
Mm.
uh, effectively, there were 2 options on the old damage table of your suppressed, if you think about it that way, and
Mm.
one result of your suppressed and pinned. So I don't think it's as easy to say it's they're better slash worse. It's different. Obviously,
Mm.
you're not taking those glancing that you do have to get rid of them, whereas before they would run out after a turn, and you used to be taking a point of damage on by the time you got there, or a glance you'd be taking that damage anyway. Now you're not taking that damage unless you get a further status effect. So yeah, interesting. It'll be good to see it on the table. What you're going to need is more, like you're going to need a lot of tokens, like to put
Yes,
around,
yes, you are.
for sure. But that, yeah, as you say, and then battlesmiths, like the problem is if you've got a big super heavy, Like, yeah, why would you not, kind of thing? Although, they might have their own roles anyway. If you've got something sitting at the table with a big gun again, but if you've got an assault vehicle, like, you're going to try and have someone running up with it to try and mend it. Probably not. But hey, they also now, a lot of them have an explode result. So explode 4 up, explode 6 up. So a bit like 10th edition 40k. Like, you kill it, it explodes, rather than relying on the damage roll to do that, which means rather than needing like the old, like, one of the corn things, was it the blood slaughterer had the plus X, or the brass scorpion had
Mm.
+2 to your, like, see if it explodes and all that. Now that's just written in as this explodes on a 6, this explodes on a 4+, that kind of thing. Super cool. Oh, here we go. So yeah, and then we got the vehicle subtypes here. So yeah, here we go. If you're a stable vehicle, you can make multiple shooting attacks in the same shooting phase without attacking at snapshot. So if you want that vehicle to roll up and start blinking fire everywhere, you take a stable vehicle. And then if you want a rapid vehicle, you can rush, which is always a 6-inch rush, that kind of thing. And then super heavies, obviously having their own rules as well, just not affected by most things because they're super heavies. Which brings us to another type of vehicle, which has changed a lot.
Oh
Flyers.
yeah.
Let's go back
Yes,
in
yes, yes.
time. Let's go back in time, 12 years or whatever it is, 15 years to 40k,
Wow.
when flyers basically used to appear on the table for about 2 minutes a turn. And they're doing the same again now. So flyers don't stay on the table. They fly on, they do their thing, and then they fly off. And interesting.
I
You
like
can
it.
intercept
I,
them.
I think it's cool.
I think it's the most realistic way that they have flyers. It'd be interesting. I haven't looked properly actually to see if things like Storm Eagles can hover rather than fly, or if they're just restricted to flying. I think they're just restricted to flying, as far as I recall. But basically, they have to be given an assignment to fly on. Whether that assignment is dropping off people, or extracting people, or combat air patrol, or a strike mission, or a strafing run. So different types of shooting attacks, and then obviously dropping off and picking up troops or what have you. But you essentially, depending on which thing they're doing, they move onto the table, they stop, people get a chance to intercept, they do their thing, and then they shoot off. Fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of money to invest in a model that is barely on the table. So yeah, if we have a look, so combat air patrol. Once the target model has completed the move, oh, that's a reaction. Sorry, was the reaction to that combat assignment drop mission. So place it anywhere on the battlefield edge, which triggers the intercept. And then if you die and whatever, that happens. And then in the movement phase, you move it up to the number of inches equal to its movement, straight forwards without turning. And then you can disembark any troops on it. And then in the shooting phase, you shoot. And then at the end of the shooting phase, it's removed from play. So
Mm.
it literally isn't even there past the shooting phase. And then like strafing run doesn't have to be moved in a straight line, that kind of thing. So each of the missions has slightly different rules on how it works as well. Um, I I think it's I think it's more realistic, to use a term. I have 2 Storm Eagles, Fire Raptors. Sorry, I will be selling a Fire Raptor. I can't imagine using 2 Fire Raptors. Here I've got Cestus Assault Ram, which isn't on the thing. Again, this mixed with 4 turns and we'll get onto that later with only one deep strike, one. And it's only deep strike, isn't it? You can only do, this would be just reserves, wouldn't it? So that would get around that. But with limited turns and having to make reserves rolls, reduces some of the effectiveness of those flyers, but less likely to get taken down. Interesting. Oh, my word. Should we take a break there and we'll come back and talk about the transports? We are back. Transports, nice and simple. Again, in terms of it can do this, and models of infantry or paragon type can embark, and bulky means they take up more than one space, and you can embark and get on and off if you're within. Well, I haven't actually looked at that. Embarking. You must end within 2 inches. There we go. End or begin the move subphase within 2 inches of any point on a facing of that model that has an access point. So that's wider. It's easier to get in and out of vehicles now. Just need the access point on that side. So a Spartan becomes, a large distance to disembark from, which is good. Nicely cleared up that those models are off the table for all rules. They are not on the table. So you can't boost them, you can't cast spells with them, you can't target them in any way, anything like that. Nice and simple. You can charge out of all vehicles.
Yes, that was
which is good. Again, if they are doing shorter game times, it's important that you can do that, I feel. But you're gonna be disordered unless it's an assault vehicle, which is cool.
What are the downsides
Other
of
than that,
disordered charges again?
oh, blimey, it's pretty big. Let me get to disordered charge. Let's
Disordered
talk about that
charge.
now, shall we? Are you on it?
Do not make a setup move or volley
That's
attack.
right.
So you don't.
Yeah,
So the setup move, not doing a setup move, is quite bad because
potentially. Yeah,
that's like half your charge, isn't it? Volley
yeah,
attack is
or
you're
more if you're
shooting before you
special
go in, or you never gain any bonuses granted by special rules
for
that require
charging.
the unit model to have successfully charged.
Yeah, the setup move is pretty big, and we'll get into
Yeah.
that later, I'm sure. But you're in a vehicle, so you've got that extra movement, so a little bit helped on that front. Cool. And, aside from that, it's their vehicles that are doing it. If your tank blows up, you're going to take some damage from being in there. That's cool. We know that. Awesome. Terrain came at a very different part of the book than normal. They've kind of done a mix here of, again, different rule systems. So quite simplified terrain. There is open terrain, there are terrain pieces, there is area terrain, difficult terrain, impassable terrain, dangerous terrain, buildings. So you can have difficult and dangerous terrain, can be the same things. Area terrain is probably the biggest one. So open terrain is open, specific terrain pieces block line of sight. Cool. Specific terrain piece. Area terrain, it comes in 3 modes: light, medium, and heavy. Light gives you a 6 up cover save, medium gives you a 5 up cover save, and 4 up for heavy, and you just have to be in it for that. The important part is that medium terrain blocks line of sight if line of sight would pass through more than 3 inches of that terrain. So if you are 3 and a bit inches into terrain, you cannot see out of it, and people can't see you in it. Now you could be on the back edge of terrain, so you're like hanging out the back, but if that's going through that, you can't be seen. That's simple. allows, in a time when you're seeing, I think the last few years I've seen fewer old school battlefields than I used to, like lots of stuff with open windows, things like that. Lots of stuff where line of sight blocking is not that great. That's why we saw a rise of contemptors sitting on the back with 2 conversion beamers and heavy weapon squads ruling the day. You've heard me bang on a load of times about how I think there should be more line of sight blocking terrain in the game, and people weren't setting up their tables properly. This is a part of an answer to that issue. What's even crazier is with heavy terrain, you can't draw line of sight through it at all. Interesting. I heard someone say, "Well, if you're both in heavy, no, if you're half an inch away from someone and you're both in the same terrain, you can't see because you have to draw a line through that heavier terrain. So you can both be standing there, like shouting at each other, not being able to affect each other. Nice and simple. All you have to do is go, yep, cool. There's a wood here. That's light terrain. Awesome. There's a ruin here. That'll be medium terrain. Now there's a heavily ruined area here with an ex-army bunker. Cool. We'll make that heavy area terrain. Simples. I think there was a note here on actually like you have to make sure you run through each terrain. Well, that's what you should be doing in a game anyway, to be fair. Like this is a heavy area. This is difficult terrain. All that kind of stuff. Difficult terrain's kept to a -2 movement. Nice and simple. Doesn't affect charge moves though, which is really good. It used to be really frustrating. And again would slow the game down a lot. And dangerous terrain taking damage. Nice and simple. Buildings being a bit different. Cool, whatever. Armor values hasn't changed that much, I don't think. But I think the terrain's important. I think in terms of not just thinking about how you're setting up your tables, it allows you more freedom just to bring stuff and name it area terrain, but in terms of how the game's played. All of a sudden, compared to most tables I played on in 2nd edition, there are places to hide units. And in a game which people are perceiving to be very shooting oriented, maybe it is, then that becomes even more important of a thing and will help balance that issue.
I thought the designer's note was interesting there, where it says about that it's intended, these building rules specifically are intended to be low impact, as they describe it, allowing for sort of generic buildings rather than it being a more elaborate thing, and that their intention is to look at that in other publications and kind of expansions. So urban warfare, they touch on their big fortifications, that sort of thing, as a separate kind of battle type. I thought this is a generic set that don't really get in the way, but in sort of
For the base
enhance
game, right?
I thought it was great. Yeah, as a
Yeah.
base, I think it's a good set.
This is your jam sponge, right? This is your jam sponge.
Yeah.
You can go and do crazy icing and different flavored coatings on it somewhere else, but your base doesn't change. I think that's a very sensible idea. Cool. And so those are like the base rules. Then you move into how does the game play within that. We've got nothing's much changed on the overlook of how moving, shooting kind of things. There are details in there. It feels very similar till we get to combat. That changes a bit. So we're talking about small changes effectively. Reserves happening at the start of the turn, and going model by model is good in that you're going to forget about reserves less. Again, like just a like quality of life like change is brilliant because how many times did you go in the movement phase? Oh shoot, I forgot to because I want to get shooting over here and I've forgotten about my reserves. Do we roll for them? So now it happens. 3 ups, cool. Bring a unit on. Fan dabby dozy. Bring them on a model at a time rather than placing them, then move them. means, again, there's less chance of them, oh no, I can't even get my models out. Like, yeah, that kind of negative thing. It's like, oh, I can snake through here and I can get, even in a bad position, I can get them out. They're not where I want them to be, but I can still play with my models, which is a pretty good thing, I think. Where we go. I think that's it for movement. Everything else seems pretty straightforward for
Yeah,
that.
there's nothing groundbreaking with that, is there really?
No,
I mean,
nice and simple.
all forms of run have become rush, fine, wrap all that together, makes it all
Yeah.
quite straightforward. Yeah, it's just straight. Not you're not doing that in the shooting phase. It keeps the game quick. Yeah, all very clear.
Shooting the same. Like nothing's really broken with in terms of the shooting phase. So why change it? As I say, I thought that you'd be having to commit to rolling like plasma, which I
Mm,
think you should still do, but speeds the game up if you don't, I suppose. So once the unit's dead, you can stop firing. So as I say, if you've got disintegrators or something like that, and you don't really want to fire them, leave them till last, and then shoot them. Assault's changed. Um,
yeah.
the first big thing was in the charge subphase. So you can't do it if you've rushed or if you're locked in combat, blah, 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 blah. To declare a target, you nominate your target and then you check. And the first thing you check is if a valid line of sight exists to at least one model in the target unit. You must then check distance.
Mm,
So if you haven't got line of sight, you can't charge.
mm.
And
No
that's
charging around a
pretty
corner.
big. No charging around the corner. No charging through 3 inches of medium
Yeah.
terrain or into heavy terrain. So
Mm,
this actually is quite a useful tool. And again, I don't know if it's the leaks people who looked at it. I haven't seen it talked about yet. But if you desperately want your countercharge unit not to be charged, you can, and you've got a piece of terrain to hide it behind, you can hide it behind that piece of terrain and it won't get charged.
mm,
You can control that a bit, and I think that's quite big. I can't remember that you needed line of sight in previous editions, uh, so it's yeah, particularly with the area terrain. So if there's a piece of area terrain near, no, not in the center of the battlefield, but pushed up the board a little bit, and you've got like white scars who are going to be quick, or space horse who are quick on the charge, and you can hover near an objective or something like that. The enemy knows you're there. Like, they're not stupid. But you can have that unit there ready to say, okay, cool, you come up there, you can't charge me, and I can come and charge you. And because you can't see me, you've been able to bombard me with artillery that doesn't need line of sight, but you've not been able to shoot me as you wish either. Then
mm.
that becomes a bit more of a threat. So that's cool. But then everything changes. So 12-inch maximum declaration, cool. Setup move. So this is how charging works now. So the first thing you do in a charge is you have a setup move. To determine how far a model must move, you add the current value of the model's initiative characteristic to the current value of the model's movement characteristic and check the table below. So move 7 for Space Marine, +4 for their initiative. Yeah, takes you to an 11. You're on move 3. So you get a 3-inch movement as your setup move, which is maximum possible distance towards the enemy, or into base contact with them if you are close enough. So that's your setup move. After that, you have volley attacks. So once this has happened, you can declare any units, including any models with attacks. So the unit making a volley attack may make a shooting attack using all the rules except only weapons of the assault phase. Assault trait may be used, and they are snapshots. The target unit is used first, followed by the target unit, and you can choose not to, of course. So everyone gets to do that. Just as long as you're not in charge range, you can do your volley attacks back. So this is your kind of standard like automatic overwatch without the actual overwatch reaction where you get to do it at full volume. And then after that, you can then make charge moves. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I haven't played this. What do you think?
When I read it, it's because it feels like such a departure from what I would call a standard Warhammer game. Games the styles that we've been playing for so long. Initially, I looked at it and thought, "Oh, okay, this is different. Something I
Wrong.
don't know how to feel about it." Like you say, but the more I sort of kind of digested it, I'm kind of okay with it because it feels less swingy to me. It feels like you're going to have less of those. You're not going to be able to do some of those long bomb type things that you could do, but it feels like the things that were you're not going to have that really unpleasant experience where it's something that should be pretty certain
Double
doesn't
ones.
come off. Yeah, I feel like your shorter range charges are going to be more likely to go off, whereas the slightly longer range ones are going to not so much.
Sure. I mean,
Which I quite like.
ironically, a double one charge can still happen, but you're going to get a minimum of standard space marine 4 inches. Like where that minimum is, and
Yeah.
then your maximum of 9 inches. Your space wolves are getting 5 to 11 inches because they're +2, that kind of thing, and other like your jump packs, but they move 12, so they're 16, so 5 inch setup move.
Mm,
The so it's still random, but it's much more manageable random. And then if you have managed to maneuver well, you've got an assault vehicle and you've bundled up and you've got within 3 inches, then guess what? There are no volley attacks. You're in base.
mm,
So um, yeah, I want to play it. Um, always get into volley attack back. Like the only frustration, not issue, frustration I see is there only being one model within 3 inches and the rest of them within 4 inches, and the attacking player going, "Well, I'm not going to shoot you because you're going to take that model off."
They specifically called that out in one of the Warcom articles, I think,
Did they?
about you have to make that decision about, well, am I going to
Yeah.
risk this?
But I mean, a lot of the time you're just not, because most of the time what you're going to be shooting, like bolt pistols and stuff like that, um, if your shooting is enough with snap shooting that you're going to do lots of damage, then you almost don't need to be charging in the first place, you know.
Mm,
So you know, because you've also had a shooting phase before this as well.
mm, mm.
So if you've done it in a shooting phase, and then those those longer charges aren't going to be easy. Right? There are ways to get around it, but I can see a lot of time just still not shooting, which would
Yeah,
be a
I agree.
shame. But we'll work it out. I'm sure we'll come around. Uh, what's interesting is if you fail the charge.
Yeah,
So if you fail the charge, where's the rule for failing the charge? It's in here somewhere. This is the frustrating bit with this book. Making a charge move is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paragraphs. A couple which are quite big. So here we go. If it's less than the distance between those models, charge roll is failed and no charge move is made. If no charge move is made, then the charging unit must have a cool check made for it. If it's passed, fine. If you fail it, you're stunned. Like, it's a pretty
oh,
big
that's quite big. And also, you don't move the distance you roll.
no, don't move at all.
Mm,
So failing it has, admittedly you're failing it at the end of your assault phase, but you're still stunned. So, and that means you can't react and blah, 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 blah. So you need to be passing some cool checks. So it'll be interesting to see when people start failing that, how that affects the rest of the game, because I just don't know. This is like, again, haven't played, too early to tell. But then the second part of the fight phase change really comes in, and that's the challenge subphase.
This is the headline, one of the headline
Yeah,
moves, isn't it? Game.
it is. Now they talked about it again. This is one they talked about a fair bit, and we've seen quite a few different bits and pieces. I don't know. So the attacking player, the charger, or the active player, should I say, can declare a challenge, and then with a character, and then one of the characters may either, accept it, or you can decline it. If you decline it, that model is disgraced, and their weapon skill and leadership is halved for the duration of the assault phase in which the status is gained. But also, you have a status. So it's combat initiative 1. It's automatically removed at the end phase, but still, you have a status on it. So everything that goes with that. Uh, and then you move into this, once you select them, this face off. So you actually pull them out of the fight, which is an interesting thing. It specifically states that.
Yeah.
And enter this kind of mini game around gambits and scores and all kinds of stuff. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 gambits to choose from as core gambits. Plus, it looks like most named characters have a gambit, and then legions have 1 or 2 gambits.
Legion, that's one, yeah.
Yep. But things like the Sergeant of Varigir Terminators has one.
Right.
Things like that as well. His is like basically you can't. The fight only ends when one person dies. You can't withdraw out of it.
Right.
So yeah, that kind of thing. So there are more ways to get gambits, and depending on what you're armed with, depending on what you're fighting, I'm sure they're going to be favourites here to take forwards. So you choose a gambit, and then you roll a focus roll. Each player may select one weapon. You take your combat initiative score, and you add it to the focus score. And then you have some other modifiers. If you're heavy, it's -1. If you're wounded, it's -1 for each point of difference between your base value and current value of wounds. If you have a special rule like Duelist Edge, you get modifiers. Light subtypes add 1, and outside support, which is your mates cheering on, which is cool. So you're rolling off with these gambits, and these gambits are things from rolling additional dice in the focus step through to grandstanding's quite fun. You roll an additional dice, discard the dice with the highest result, and get no outside support, but you gain extra attacks in that phase. So you work out basically who's the winner of this focus roll, and then you strike. So the challenge advantage, which is the winner of that focus roll, then gets to make the hits, wounds, saving throws, apply damage, fight back. So the rest of it's straightforward. If one of them kills the enemy, the game ends. If it ends as a draw, then you have the player with them. All attacks have been made. Neither the challenger nor challenge has been removed. It's a draw. Control the player on the model with the challenge advantage may choose to either return to the step 2 and carry on fighting, or go to the glory step. So, if you think you're going to win the fight, you can keep fighting all the time. You're winning, like doing more wounds to the opponent, or winning that challenge advantage. And if you don't think it's going to end well, you can just say, cool, we'll stalemate it out and go to the glory step. So if you've been removed, yep, that's 1. If neither model was removed, no wounds were inflicted. It's a draw, and neither player gains any combat resolution. There we go. Once the winner of the challenge was decided, players must return to step 1, select a new combat to clear challenges for. So that's talking about other challenges, because you have to select them all all the way through. And then after that, those models are then repositioned back into their fights as well, which is an important thing. But you can actually do some kind of shenanigans with that, which is interesting.
Oh, delightful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's anything too crazy, but you can move them back in as you wish, which is an interesting aspect of having to take them out. What do you think with challenges?
I think the timing of them. I like them overall because I wasn't a huge fan of challenges in the previous edition of the game, mainly because of you could so easily neuter the effect of a powerful character
Right.
by having a sergeant level character step up, and it just felt a bit. The mechanics of it felt were relatively involved for an ultimately dissatisfying kind of outcome. Like a power character absolutely stomping one guy into the ground. It was sort of a mini combat. This feels more flavorful. I think the timing of it is quite interesting. The fact that you do all your charges, you get all that kind of set up, then you do the challenges, then you return to the more to the fight sub phase. I think the timing of that's quite fun. I think it
That's
poses.
very
I know,
Hollywood, right? That's
yeah,
very
exactly. Yeah,
our two
yeah,
champions have
and I
stepped
think
forward.
that
And
that
once
feels
we
like that.
work that out,
Yeah,
sorry,
I quite like that. I think that works quite well. It again, it feels a lot because it feels like there's a lot to learn there because it's new. But I have a feeling that once it's in practice, and again, cheat sheets particularly, I mean, having just little things that just give a view of what each of those gambits do, and then on to the many others that are going to exist. Once you start getting a feel for it and about which one to use and when, I feel like that's going to flow quite well. It doesn't once you actually get into it, it doesn't feel overly complicated. I'm cautiously optimistic about this. I think it could be quite good fun, particularly as the number of people who can actually engage in a challenge has been
it's
reduced
limited.
dramatically.
Mm. Yeah, it feels like they want more people to have those epic duels, and for those
Yes.
duels to be a centre point. Uh, it will be interesting to see whether it comes down to um, I've got the best setup to win challenges, and then the opponent is like, well, cool, I'll have to accept, and I'm going to try and withdraw, and if I survive, we'll end the challenge as soon as possible. But even within that, that can tell a story, so it's not necessarily bad. Uh, uh, as I say, with all the different Legion specific gambits as well, there's a lot to choose from. Um, and I can just see like that, it's a dice game at the end of the day. The person who's like, I'm set up to do challenges, and then just a little bit of bad luck on the dice rolls or some good invulnerable saves, and actually the little guy wins because he knows he's not going to out survive. He's not going to win the challenge in the long run, so he's just gone for a ballsy kind of, I'm going to go flurry of blows. I'm going to
Mm.
go, that kind of thing. Uh, yeah, so it'll be interesting. Or just I'm going to try and rack up combat resolution by taunting and
Mm.
baiting, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I just don't know. It's an interesting one. And again, I think until we see it on the table, Primarchs challenging each other, it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I feel like your
So
sense of occasion is going to be quite high as you've got these characters sort of circling each other and then engaging. I think that it does add a certain gravitas to that, which I quite like. I think that's going to be quite good fun. Generally,
now,
the combat phase in general seems to or the assault phase rather, particularly the fight sub phase, is very well described. It's described in some detail here across 2, 4, 8, 10. 12. There's a lot of 12 pages there to explain just the fight sub phase.
yeah, it feels like that's just the theme of the book, right? Just trying to
Yeah.
see. I'm just again reading through all this. Can models that fought in the combat in the challenge fight? If there's other
That's a
word
good
for the
question.
duration of the challenge, so they considered out of play.
Note that this means that models that make attacks in the challenge subphase will not be able to make
There we go.
attacks of any kind during the following. This is in the returning the challenger and
Sure.
challenged
I
unit.
assume so. Again, this is the thing, right, with this book. There's a lot of words trying to find that one bit.
I was going to say, I got lucky there that I happened to look at the area.
You
I mean, I
looked at that
sort of
bit,
assumed
whereas, yeah, which
returning the
is
challenger,
sensible.
but I happened to look at that bit first and picked it out. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Which is also in a box, which is not usually the place where you look for the rule. That's normally the place that explains the rule.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all good. And maybe it is somewhere else, but I say we're trying to refill this book. So combat, fight subphase, pretty standard. Roll your dice, roll to hit, roll to wound, initiative steps, blah 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 blah. This is where it seems like things that were an issue have been slightly addressed. Though I think there are a few of these. Models can be taken from anywhere. Anyone in the unit can die. This is a simplification. Well, I say addressed. This could just be, do we want people worrying about where models come from, or do we just open it up like it is in most other game systems that we have? Let's open it up. So there's no, it's not only models in engagement range, blah, 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 stuff like that. It's any model in the unit you can take off. Which is just means it means more people are going to die as much as anything else as well, which is a good thing overall.
I quite appreciate the designer's notes that they've got peppered through this, and it seems to be particularly prominent in this subphase. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's at least 5 across this phase of designers' notes, and I think that helps. I think they've been quite good at having explanations of rules as intended here. Particularly, we'll get on to some of the other rules, but I mean where they do those little summaries, where you've got the kind of flavor text is in, or the lore text is in italic, the summary is in bold, and then the full
Yeah.
detail is in regular beneath it. There seems to be that is almost a definition of rule as intended, and here's the rule as written. That seems to run throughout this thing, but the designer's notes touches on that as well, which I
think
find very helpful.
unlikely target models is a key one here.
That's
It
exactly the
explains
one.
like,
Yeah.
like it may seem like, how can that model die? Basically, it's like, well, we're abstracting, like models don't stand around, which is a very logical, simple explanation. But not everyone works that way within the game. They want to, it doesn't make any sense. I can hit that guy over there, or you're new and you just don't appreciate that, kind of what's happening. So yeah, it does kind of help guide. Doesn't necessarily always answer things, but it gives an idea of the purpose. So you can then extrapolate from that.
Agreed, and I think therefore it addresses a lot more than it doesn't. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
I think it being present,
Yes.
I think means you're going to get a lot more of it's going to be there rather than it sort of confounding people. As an aside, as we're going through this, I'm finding spoilers for where we're going to get to later. I'm finding the number of pictures of mass drop pod assaults somewhat triggering, based
Triggering.
on
Yeah,
what we're going
indeed.
to. Yeah. But we'll come to that. Yet another page of multiple drop pods landing simultaneously. Anyway, yeah.
There's multiple games going on right next to each other. Okay. Resolution having its own phase is an interesting one. But more than that, it's so once you've got a winner, loser takes a panic check. Now, the player that loses combat must make a single leadership check. The check is used the majority of the unit under that player's control in the combat. If you've more than one unit, they may select one unit and use the leadership characteristic of the majority of models in that unit for the check. And there we go. If any unit under losing player control, blah, 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 if it failed, all models in the combat under the control of the player that lost the combat gain the routed status. So if you charge 3 units into Horus and his Terminator buddies, and they win by 1, and you fail your 1 panic check, all 3 units are routed. 1 check for the whole fight.
Wow.
That's big.
That could
That's a
be,
big
yeah,
change.
that could really hurt, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So That's more decisive, potentially, in that, quicker as well, more straightforward. We then move to the aftermath phase after that. So a unit with routed falls back. If you haven't routed, so you've passed your panic check, you can choose to hold, disengage, or fall back. And if all enemy, and then the winner, if all enemy units are falling back or disengaging, they may choose to have that unit gunned down, combat pursue, gun down, or consolidate. So here we go. So hold is you stay in combat. Wonderful. Disengage. So you can do disengage if you lose only. So you make an immediate disengage move. So this is new. In any direction, as long as each model is moving away from the enemy. You cannot move without moving closer to such an enemy, blah, 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 blah. You can move freely. So you can move through enemies, blah, 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 blah. You make your disengage move, which is model's movement characteristic. So again, like 7, say, as an average. So you move 7 away. Now, if you're in 2 lines, that means you're going to be 7 inches away. But most of the time, combats aren't just 2 lines. There's models like stuck in the middle and being so moving 7 back might end up with a model being 5 inches away or something like that, which is important because the enemy can you got to concern or fall back, which you gain the route status. You can choose. You can think, I don't want to be here. I need to run and not just disengage.
Mm.
So when they're disengaged or route or fall back, you can either gun down, so you make a shooting attack targeting the enemy that's fallen back. It's a volley attack, so it's all the usual rules that affect that. It's assault weapons, it's snap firing, that kind of thing. Or you can pursue, so you can move a number of inches equal to their initiative characteristic added to the result of the dice roll for that unit, plus a dice roll basically. So initiative 4, if a unit has move 7, you're in lines, you've got a better than 50-50 chance of catching back up with that unit. If they're deeply embedded in you, you are catching that unit. If any model from the unit is pursuing, you move into base contact and you are locked in combat with that unit. So you don't run them down.
Yeah, that's one of
You
the
are
big
just
ones
in
that
combat.
creeping advances
It's
have gone. But
massive.
I quite like this. I quite like this that you have to actually you don't just touch them and then they all die. You actually have to. They are going to be at a massive disadvantage in your next round of combat. Does perhaps
Well,
speak to the whole point about you make about the 4 turns is too short. But I do like the fact that you're gonna get to actually fight through the wiping out of a unit. I think it's quite fun.
yeah, it's got a lot of consequences, this.
Yes.
So if you can take a mass blob of militia that, and you can choose an enemy that isn't going to wipe you out, like, who need to get past you or something like that, and just block them up, then they can't just take that unit out in one round. They might have to follow up to try and fight you again, that kind of thing. It allows units to stay in combat if they want to be in combat. If you've charged me, or so if I charge you and I break you, I can be like, I really need to be in combat so I can't get shot. Oh, cool! I managed to pursue you. That's fine. I'll take that. I'm locked in combat again. Of course, if you're routed, you're like initiative 1 and blah 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 blah, all that kind of stuff. But what it means is you're gonna you're gonna have to finish those units off, whether it's with shooting or combat. So
Mm.
A, that takes longer in the long run. B, that means um, you might be taking longer, like longer time wise, but it might be taking longer game turns to achieve what you want to achieve with said units. Is it a good or a bad thing? I don't know yet. I haven't played the game enough. What I like is they've given you the gun down option. So
Yeah.
someone charges you, you're stood on an objective, you beat them, they run away from the objective. You want to stay standing on the objective, so I'm going to shoot you instead. Gun you down. That's good. Uh, different units going to be differently effective doing that, but that's a massive change. And again, I'm not 100% sure how that's going to roll out as we go through. I think it's going to be interesting, but it is frustrating. It's happened in all the game systems I've ever played. I remember playing Warhammer Fantasy Battle and going, "Yep, I'm going to let those 6 Bretonian knights charge me in the flank, and I'm going to move my character over there. Oh no, he hasn't killed anyone. Oh no, you've got away with my rank bonus. You've won combat by 1. That's all right. Leadership 10 re-rollable. 11, 11. Oh, you've just run down 700 points with your 120 point unit. Okay, it stops that happening, which is probably worth it just on that fact. So yeah, at the end of the day, that unit's going to be routed again. So if it's their turn, next turn they're going to fall back again, all that kind of stuff. So it's not like you've gotten away with it, is it?
No, no, exactly. It's making you work for it. Um,
Mm,
does it make it less deadly? Probably.
yes, definitely, because you can't run, a super tanky unit that just doesn't
No.
take any damage, do 2 wounds to an enemy, and run 20 guys down.
Yeah.
In this combat, you're just going to be stuck there fighting those guys, not taking any damage for the whole game.
Yeah.
So, in that aspect, it's less deadly.
But
But
routed status is pretty
it's
bad
not
news.
good. Yeah.
And
And
you're sort of going in and shocking people away, aren't you, rather than just eliminating.
yeah, and if you are desperate to wipe that unit out, there is a chance you don't pursue them. You let them go and then charge them in your turn. Like, so you can shoot them and do other things as well. So there's control around it as well, which is good. But it's interesting, shall we say. Wonderful. So that's the base rules. And as we said, so shooting movement, like some little changes in movement, which I think are quality of life as much as anything else. Assault has changed a lot. Like, we're talking through the different unit types, like vehicles again, like they're different, but at the end of the day, they're still going to be driving around with big guns on or getting blown up as as they are already. The other probably biggest change to how we approach our games is how you choose your army list. And I think this has kind of blown people's minds a little bit. I don't think it's particularly complicated. Again, you and I have played some Legions Imperialis.
And
This
there
is
we are.
not too dissimilar
Exactly
to
right.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
The one issue which I kind of hold up is some of the images used, to note which unit types are what, might not be the clearest. It's gonna take a while to remember them.
Yeah.
But elites being, unfortunately, the elites looks like a titan to me,
Yeah.
rather than rather than a combat type dude, that kind of thing. But yeah,
Certainly,
it,
it looks like a knight to me. Yeah, it looks like
yeah,
a.
a knight. Sorry, a knight. Yeah, like a lancer or something. Well, obviously not a lancer, a castigator. But yeah, once you're used to these, I think that's going to go away. This is a prime example. This Crusade Force organization chart, I don't think is in the Liber for Space Marines and the battlefield roles. Like, I think if you're going to be writing lots of army lists and you haven't got an app that's laid out like this, I'd be tempted to photocopy these, make a sheet like that I can refer to with all my
Yeah.
different detachments available and what they mean, and then also on that page put on my prime advantages and that kind of thing, because particularly early on, it's going to take a while to remember what they are, what they do, uh, and as we go through, be like kind of how to remember all that stuff as well. What's nice, I thought here was the 2 pages of friend of the show Ben and his Imperial Fist army. Oh, more than that, like 4 pages about how
Which
he builds his
look,
army.
which looks great.
It does, doesn't it?
The army itself looks
Yeah,
stunning. I think
But
they've laid that out very, very well as a worked
it's
example. I think is a nice way of doing it.
a really logical because I was reading it going, I think I get it. But this makes it very simple. It's like, yeah, okay, I did get it. It makes loads of sense, and like it looks confusing until you have an understanding on how it works. Which, as you say, playing Legions Imperialis comes in very easily. So essentially, you have um, you have to take a Crusade primary detachment in a Crusade detachment because we don't have other options yet. There might be the Crusade Force Orc Shot. So the Crusade primary detachment allows you to take a high command, up to 3 commands, up to 4 what are they called, troops, and then 4
Transport.
transports.
Mm.
There are no dedicated transports anymore. They have to be taken as transports, and there are no vehicle squadrons anymore. Have to be taken like this. So within that, you have this like the star around the circle on one of the command and one of the uh, troop um, options. These aren't compulsory. There are no compulsory like troops anymore. Um, to have a detachment, you have to have used one of the slots, basically. So you can just take a Crusade primary detachment and take a commander, and that could be you done for your primary detachment if you
Mm.
wish. But these prime slots add on additional benefits, and you choose them. So what we got here? Core ones. Master Sergeant. So the prime slot, the unit selected to fill that slot has +1 attacks, weapon skill, and leadership, and the champion subtype. If it already has a champion subtype, it's +1. Awesome. You can only choose that once per detachment. Groovy. Or combat vets, models in this unit fill the prime slot, gain a bonus +1 to leadership, cool intelligence, and willpower to a maximum of 10. Paragon, one model in the unit selected to fill the prime slot as a command subtype gains +1 to its attacks, weapon skill, and ballistic skill. Special assignment. The prime advantage may only be selected for a command slot. The command slot for which is selected may be filled by a high command unit but remains a command slot. Moreover, no additional detachments of any kind may be selected due to the slot, regardless of the battlefield role or any. Sorry. Yeah, basically allows you to take an extra high command, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then logistical benefit, which is which is your catch-all kind of thing. Add one additional force org shot to the prime slot, maybe any battlefield role other than high command, command, warlord, or lord of will. This advantage may only be selected once per detachment. So this is, I really want to have I don't know, some Terminators, but I don't want, I haven't got the space to unlock an auxiliary detachment to take the Terminators, or I can use a prime slot instead to do this. That thing, or however you want to do it. And then from there, your basically what you take opens up additional detachments. So I don't know. That's army building. We're going to get into that in a bit, but essentially that's how it works, right? And then there are additional detachments within the Space Marines, and then additional detachments within whichever legion you're playing within the Space Marines as well. I like it.
Certainly, when
How
I
do you
first
feel
read,
about that?
being a fan and being that I got into all things of this hobby through Epic second edition, I suppose it was,
Mm,
with army cards. This feels inspired by that, and as you say, the parallels with Legions Imperialis, which is clearly inspired by that method of picking an army. I find it very interesting they've managed to sort of fuse that approach with something that's as flexible as this. This feels really very flexible, pretty much, once you've got your head into it. I found it quite hard to kind of differentiate between additional detachments, auxiliary detachments, and apex detachments,
sure.
trying
Yes.
to determine where those came in and how you unlock each of those different types and how they interrelate to each other. And initially, I'm finding the sort of difficulty, if you like, of accessing high command, which unlocks the various things. Tricky, but I feel like a bit like with Legions Imperialis to a lesser extent in this case, the sense that we've got more coming is very real. The sense that there's going to be more of this. I think we're working with a good core here, but I wonder when we start getting other primary detachment types or other things that can manipulate this, that's going to open up even more opportunities. But as you say, it seems entirely workable. It is crying out for an app. I don't envy the people who were perhaps going to give that a go. It feels like there's a real opportunity to make something that's super cool here, particularly something that was visually quite appealing. But I mean, you could do something quite well with just a set of cards, frankly.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, a basic app doesn't need the pictures. It just needs drop-down menus for you've taken one of these, that allows you one of these. Like, okay, cool. I mean, you're talking about the Apex attachments. Basically, they come from high command, as you say. There's only one
yeah,
high command slot, so you're looking at one Apex detachment rather than taking an extra auxiliary detachment. Um, each high command force also build. Yeah, I think the first couple of times you build an army, you'll be like, okay, how do I unlock what I want to take? But I think
yeah,
once you've done it a handful of times, it'll become quite straightforward. So, like, you've got the warlord detachment here, which is, a warlord, which is Primarch, effectively that level with a retinue and um, a heavy transport as an option. Lord of War detachment can have up to 2 Lords of War, still restricted by 25% total. Same for the Primarchs as well, which is good. And that is a combined total, I believe. Uh, Yep, the no army may spend more than 25% of its points limits on units with either the Warlord or Lord of War battlefield role. So that's good. So you're not going crazy there. That's still in there. And there's an allied detachment, which may include auxiliary detachments. So restricted on what you can take initially, but then the auxiliary detachments we got an armored fist, which is 4 little tanks, 4 big tanks, or 4 transports, 4 big tanks. Tactical support gives you troops and support things like rapiers, stuff like that. Armor support gives you tanks. Heavy support gives you a dreadnought or war engine, should I say? Dreadnoughts are much more restricted than they were. That
oh
is
yeah,
one thing. At the moment, you're only getting one selection per auxiliary detachment, so you're having to use up one of your auxiliaries to get one dreadnought. Combat Pioneer, we've got a couple of what are they called? Recons, Shock Assault for heavy assault troops, and First Strike for fast attack troops. And then we've got like Recon Company and things like that in the other one, which also unlock. And some of those, when we get to the specific ones in the Libers, are the troops you can select, like the Space Wolves one. I'm talking about Space Wolves. That's the only one I've really looked at, probably. If you take the Grey Slayers, whatever they're called, is it the Slayers? Yeah, they kept the Slayers, didn't keep the Stalkers.
yeah.
Then you've got to fill them out. Like the options can only be Grey Slayers within that auxiliary detachment. But that auxiliary detachment for those Grey Slayers allows you another prime advantage. Like there are options within that. It's not total options, but there are quite a few options, and they're only going to grow. We're not playing Index Hammer with the levers, but we are playing Basic, and that will expand when we look at like new characters added in the Journal Tactica, and as we go through different ones of those as well, when they're bringing more stuff in. If you've taken certain characters, it unlocks certain stuff within detachments. You know, I I like the flexibility of it because it's not just take whatever you want,
Mm.
but it is like in even on this crusade thing. If you took 3 centurions, and you could take 6 dreadnoughts if you want, still viable. It costs you a lot to do it in terms of what else you can have, but you can do it. So you know, and
So
and as we
it's got
go,
it really does allow for certain things to unlock in certain ways. I
yeah,
mean, the point about I think most people realised from the articles, we made it quite clear that you're probably going to need more centurion level type characters, console type characters in your army than you probably had before,
Yeah.
because that's what's unlocking so many. I mean, initially when you, and also it feels like you are looking at it, you're only looking at a portion of the picture when you just look at the organization that's in this book alone. This is the
Yes.
core,
Oh, big time.
but it's surprising actually how restrictive this is. This, and even then, it's weird how it appears restrictive. When I first looked at this, I thought, wow, that's actually really hard to get elites, because to get an elite slot, I have to choose my one apex detachment. First of all, I have to have a sort of paragon level um, character or high
No, just
command
high command,
character.
don't you?
I've got
Yeah,
to have a high
Praetor.
command. Yeah, not a high, true, not technically a paragon, but I've got to have a high command level character. That gives me my 3 elites, but then I can't have any retinues. Well, you think, well, actually, hang on. Yes, I can, because I can use the logistical benefit
Warlord.
from my 2 prime slots. So then I could choose one of the retinues rather than and still have my 3 slots. And you think, well, actually, that's not a million miles away from what it was with the previous Crusade force organization chart, where I could only take 3 or 4 elites, whichever. Well, I can't remember off the top of my head. 3 or 4 of any one particular choice, 6 in the case of troops, things like that. So you were restricted there anyway. It just felt like it was slightly tricky with that either or, but actually that opens up hugely when you actually first of all when you start considering the prime benefits. And as an aside, I like the idea of rewarding someone for taking certain things rather than saying you must take this. I'd rather offer the benefit, which I think is quite a good way of doing it. um, but as soon as you start looking at these other detachment types, that completely opens that up again, to be much more flexible, and it feels more relaxed accordingly. You can't quite take anything you want, but it opens up things. And but the fact that that those auxiliary detachments are unlocked by specific characters makes me far more inclined to take those characters and try them out.
Yeah.
And you think, yeah, build a force around that. I mean,
So,
we won't go into it. We won't go into the levers, but I mean, just one as
well,
example there. The veteran cadre is unlocked by having a legion champion as one of
yeah.
your command choices. That gives you the option of a retinue, an elite, and a heavy transport. You're like, yeah, that's great, and I can have as many of those as I like. I think.
No, well, it's an auxiliary detachment, so you still need to unlock them.
You need to unlock them, but you can have as many as you like. Yeah, as when a Legion champion is selected to fill a command center, then the player may choose to add 1 veteran cadre.
Yeah.
So if I had
Instead of
2
the
Legion
option,
champions, I could have 2 of those.
two of
You know,
those.
so there's options there, behind all of those. And it just, as I say, to judge it only as I did initially on what is presented in the rulebook is judging it too quickly, because there are other options
Very
available
much
to you.
so, as you say. And there's 6 extras just in the levers. One of them is like, well, demonic manifestation. So if you've taken the esoterics, you can take some demon brutes. You've got the veterans. You've got an apothecary detachment. So there's just 6 options for apothecaries. Tech marines, same. Storm battery, siege breaker to give you some tanks and some very specific tanks and stuff, rapiers, and then recons. But as you said, if you take a vigilator, but you add on to that your legion ones as well. So all of a sudden you've got
Yeah.
one. So you can always take a primary. You can take a warlord, a lord of war, and an allied with those without unlocking them. They're unlocked, so that's 4 straight away. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10, 16 plus your legion ones already.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is like the easiest thing to keep adding stuff into.
Yeah.
And here, um, we haven't really talked about some of the special rules yet. We might just do that before we probably wrap this one up. But you can't. So we referenced it earlier. Deep striking is
Yeah.
interesting, shall we say. So currently you can only do 1 deep strike. No more than 1 unit may attempt a deep strike in a given player turn. You're allowed to deep strike a unit, a, a drop pod with something in it, but only 1 per turn. Well, the way to make a deep strike army work is to include an auxiliary detachment. You know, what was the one called in second edition? The Right War was the first edition.
In what?
The first edition generic Right of War that was deep striking. Can't think. My mind's gone blank.
Drop Pod Assault.
Yeah, Drop Pod Assault. There's the other one, isn't there? Angels, not the Blood Angels ones. It was
Angel's Wrath. Angel's Wrath.
Angel's Wrath. Yeah, Angel's Wrath allows the units you can put into it. May all deep strike on the same turn. Like simple. I can only imagine something along those lines is coming.
Yes, and I agree with that. I still think it's probably a bit of a miss that it's not in this. It's not in the core book, at least in some form, or indeed in a liber, which you could essentially consider like a core book.
Straight
I'm a
away,
little
yeah.
surprised at that. As you say, it's an obvious thing which they could add. I mean, we're probably not going to touch on it in this session, but the Istvan book, the first Journal Tactica, there's a character in that called the Master of Descent. It is a book
Yes.
about the drop site massacre. There's an image of a drop pod almost on every other page. That doesn't offer the opportunity to do it. The Master of Descent, super cool character. Absolutely love what that character brings to it. Including opens up a planetfall spear tip auxiliary detachment. You're like, yeah, this is absolutely going to be the thing. It doesn't. It doesn't open up that. But as you say, it does suggest that it's going to come at a later stage. I'm amazed. It's I may be proved wrong. Maybe someone else who's studied this more than we've been able to is going to say, oh no, this is what unlocks it. But as far as I can tell, there's nothing that unlocks the ability to take a drop pod army, a termite underground assault type army, or a teleport attack type army. Any of those kinds of armies, and indeed anyone who was sort of relying on that heavily as even more, even if they're not deploying their entire army, but trying to do that with, you say, you're only dropping 4 units via deep strike, absolute mess. 3 actually, because you can't deep strike on the first turn unless you've got a character like the Master of Descent. But generally, you're only dropping 3 units via deep strike, and one of those is on the last turn of the game.
And
That feels
you can't charge when you do it
yeah,
either.
you can't charge out of that deep strike, indeed. Yeah. So
Yes, I think you're right. I think we'll get into some frustrations. I think later on, but yeah, it was surprised me the Master of Descent didn't allow like the tip of the
mate,
spear didn't allow like multiple units. Doesn't have to be like 8 or a whole army, but to allow a number of them to deploy. But yeah, yes.
I don't know why I found that weirdly irked me.
Oh
That
no,
they
I don't think
don't.
it's weird. I don't think
No,
it's weird
I
at
don't
all.
know, I found that disproportionately
I
irritating.
don't think it's
Simply,
disproportionate.
no, you think that's
Well,
a reasonable
no,
thing?
I think so. So let's crack on here, and I'll come to we'll talk about some of the issues I think some people have
All right,
had.
yeah.
So missions, 3 basic missions in this book. 3, it's not a lot. We're going to be getting more missions. The ones in the Journal Tactica, in the Journal Tactica is very specific. I'm hoping that as we go on, we'll get more missions coming out
Mm.
in a Tactica down the line, because 3 missions is not a lot, and they're pretty basic, which is again not necessarily a major issue. But what's interesting is we have objective markers. Cool, score you 1 point or whatever. We haven't talked about the units yet. We haven't talked about all the special rules, but tax squads are quite good because they score you extra victory points when you're scoring victory points. We have limited amount of none of these. I think we put down, is it 5, 4, 5 markers? This is 2 objective markers, and that is 4 objective markers. So not like 6, not 8, not hundreds going down to fight over, which is going to be tricky. But the secondary mission objectives have variable values. So slay the warlord 3, first strike 4, and they give you the relevant victory points for achieving those. So you've got multiple ways again now to write your mission, because these secondary objectives can be adjusted based on what you want the missions to achieve, which I think is pretty cool.
Mm.
There's nothing stand out about the missions. I say they're pretty basic. They do have a special rule called counter offensive, which is in most of them, if not all of them. If at the start of the last battle turn of the battle, a player has only half or less the number of victory points scored by the opposing player, they may declare a counteroffensive. If they choose to do so, all victory points scored by that player in the last battle round for controlling an objective or by means of the Vanguard X rule are doubled. Number of victory points scored is doubled after any modifiers have been applied to the value of an objective. I mean, may choose to do it if you're losing. Why would you not? It
Mm.
seems a bit of an interesting one. You could end up fighting over objectives to such a point where no one's really scoring them, and then
Mm.
going, "Oh, cool, I'm going to do this," and leap ahead of you. Like it could be 2-1 going into the final round, and get one objective, because that's half two. Half one is half of two. But I'm not overly excited. I wanted more
No.
missions.
I've just noticed in the which I didn't spot before, under select armies under the core missions,
Mm.
it explicitly says all armies for use in the core mission must use a points limit of 3,000 points.
So
That's surprising.
this is very much match play.
Mm.
This is, I suspect, what you'll be playing at a Warhammer World
Mm.
event. Uh, they've obviously designed them around 3,000 points. Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
whatever.
it's curious that it's done
Yeah,
that. And obviously, people won't necessarily, and particularly as it goes elsewhere. And I've now lost where it says that, but they've got the different types of play. I think it's
yeah.
the army examples, isn't it?
This was
So
quite nicely written, actually.
yeah, I thought
Um,
that.
so you've got match play, tournament play, which we're used to with other games, and then instead of open play, they put campaign play.
Mm.
It's clear that the Heresy's moved into this. It's not necessarily a bad thing where you've got people who are going to play this less of a narrative and more as a setting. One of the new YouTube channels, Heresy YouTube channels that are starting up, the person involved with it is very much talking about narrative gaming, and narrative for him. One thing he talks about a lot is models should do what they do in the books. And I'm like, I agree with that. I think that's a baseline for narrative gaming because
Mm.
models can do what they do in the books, and you can play an all-out tournament with them. Like,
Mm.
they're very different things for me. Campaign play is a very specific kind of thing. It's interesting they put campaign play rather than narrative. I think it's easier for GW to define. I think it's an interesting mix up from where Heresy started. I think we've
Mm.
still got a very strong community of people who like, for whatever value of narrative you have, like narrative gaming, gamings within settings, things like that. I think
Mm.
that's good. But I thought there was a half decent attempt for them to look at that, and the General Tactica. It's a very there's it's not a match play scenario you're playing there for sure.
Mm.
Um, and they're going to put out exemplary battles as well, which is good.
I wonder if they will be releasing a book almost specifically of
Missions.
additional missions
I
or
hope
like
so.
core missions specifically. That you got these three core missions. I wonder if there will be a journal tactica which could be only missions.
Yeah, no, or exemplary battles, or a PDF just to expand it. I hope so because three's not enough, and they are fairly bland. Well, yeah, they're not. There's not a lot written in there. 4 turns, I don't like it. I really don't like it.
Mm.
Uh, 40k Age of Sigmar Fantasy, sorry, it used to be 6 turns. You had a maneuvering. Now I appreciate that. Um, Times change, generations have different. I think we play down like younger generations a little bit too much. Like they sit and want to watch the Snyder cut of Superman, even though it's 4 hours long. Like people play Total War Warhammer for hours at a time on their computer. They do engage in activities which require concentration and time. Age of Sigmar 40k moving to 5 turns was not my favourite thing, but it's okay. Say in 4 turns, if you've got some dudes running up the table, you might just run out of time before they can do anything. Yes, they can get, and it's not about whether they win the game or not. Like people are looking at, say, the Raven Guard rules. At the moment, their Legion trait is anyone shooting over 18 inches at them, I think, is firing snapshots, which is a powerful rule. But when you've only got 4 turns and say the objectives are lined up across the middle of the table, how many turns are you going to be outside of 18 inches with all your stuff and still have a chance of scoring enough points to win the game? You're not, because stuff has to rush to the middle. If you've got something that's fast and vaguely durable, it's going to be killer. If you've got something slow that you want, what's the point? Almost, I'm being hyperbolic a little bit with this. Some people like it, but also if I'm going to an event and I'm playing a 4-turn game because people want chilled out war game, but why am I going to an event? Like if it's at that point, just have some mates around. Just like what, at what point do you get to why bother playing? Like just put some models down, roll some dice. Don't worry about an actual game. Like again, I'm taking it to an extreme. But I want to be able to put a unit down and I want to go, okay, I'm going to try doing this. Oh no, like plans have changed. I need to react to that rather than just, move them 7 inches here because that's all I can do. Because the table sizes haven't changed,
Sort
have
of
they?
prematurely over the gun. Yeah, I know what you mean. And this is a limit that's just set directly within the mission itself, isn't it? The only place
Yeah,
it's
there's
defined is
no reason
that
other
it's a major
missions can't have 5 turns,
battle.
6 turns.
Yeah.
Zero reason at all.
Mm.
That's what they've selected at the moment. And
But as it stands, we've got 3 missions and possibly a fourth. And I'm just going to check it. That are
and it's
locked
still
for
six by
4 turns,
four
aren't they?
board as
So,
well. It's not as if
yeah.
you end up playing Hammer and Anvil, right? There's 24 inches between you, cool, but there's also a 24-inch deployment zone. So if you don't want to engage with your enemy in 4 turns, you don't have to engage with the enemy. Again, you might not win the game. That's irrelevant. It won't be fun. Like that
Mm.
kills. Negative play experiences kill games quicker than lack of balance. Lack of balance can be fixed
Mm.
a lot easier. Yeah, and maybe I'm in the minority with a lot of people seem to want 4 games. I'm running an event in later in the year, and we've got a whole weekend. And if you can't play 5 turns in 2.5 to 3 hours or whatever it is, then my word, like, or if you have to give that long for 4 turns, and someone does play quick, my word, they're going to be bored. They're going to have so much time
Mm. Mm.
around. And if I do feel, and again, I haven't played the game. This is me. This is one of my triggers. It's fine. If you can't design the game to be played within the time limit at 5 turns, or if the game you've designed can't do that, I think you need to go back and have a look. And again, I haven't played this.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain that we can play 5 turns and play reasonable time games in this. I see no reason
Mm.
why. The only longer thing is people getting stuck up in combats, but they actually don't have to do that. You know.
Mm.
But hey, we'll see. Um,
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things, like a couple of these things, it's going to need to be played through. It was interesting as well that it sort of implies, which of course I don't think anyone's going to do, is you select your
oh yeah,
mission and
that's,
then you select your armies.
well, that's not a problem in if you and I were playing a campaign or a narrative. Actually, that fits. Okay, Howard, what game are we going to
Yes.
play? We're going to play this mission here where you're assaulting this bunker, but I actually know you're coming. Okay, cool. Right. Well, let's select an army that fits that narrative. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Most of us don't play that way.
And what makes me a little nervous is back to my trigger, which is this lack of multiple deep strike type setup. It makes me think that that's going to be locked behind a mission rather than
Right.
a particular unit type. So I have a suspicion that they might say, well, that's not a great play experience. Having it's quite a niche scenario, quite literally, where you're doing a drop assault or something similar. Therefore, we'll lock that to a mission to say, in this mission, you can deep strike any of the attacker, sort of argument's sake, can deep strike up to 3 units per turn rather than one.
Yeah,
Or in the case of pod units can have an unlimited number of deep strikes in turns 1 and 2
I'm going
or
to put
something
my
like that.
£1 on that not
But
happening.
I can see that getting locked to a mission because they say you should be designing your
No.
forces around that. But if you're then taking, as you say, to events or otherwise, that just means that's just not
People go to
available.
the club, like pick up a game. Like you can't pick up a game and then like it's hard to pick up a game and then
Yeah.
choose your army. This
No, exactly. That's what I mean. That's why I think that's why I wouldn't want that approach to be the only way to access that type of army, because it would mean that pickup game is basically impossible.
or the problem is like maybe this is why you've only got 4 turns because you have to spend the first hour writing an army list. Like um, and you also then get
Yeah.
into the point like there's positives and negatives for selecting your armies based on knowing like who you're up against. You can do it
Mm.
to try and beat them, but you can also do it to make sure that you know you're not ending up with those kind of rock paper scissors things. Unfortunately, a lot of times people will lean slightly more towards, oh yeah, well, okay, it's world eaters, so I'm going to take like stuff to can keep getting away from him or whatever, that kind of thing. I mean, what you see here, yeah, there is something nice about choosing armies for missions when you look at some game systems, the way you do it. Um, it adds an immersion level, but it can be broken. I mean, I wonder if this was. I can't even remember if it was specifically the other way around for or just didn't mention selecting armies previously. Either way, I don't think it'll be
I
done.
wouldn't. I wouldn't. I don't think I'd hate it if that
It
was
won't be. It
the
won't be.
case. I mean, I think it would make certain game types be a bit tricky. But
I'm
if
gonna.
that is the case, that you really want to do that, and you really want to do it that way, and you really want to make the mission very impactful, and ideally you have forces specifically designed for that, and your mission is the only way to unlock a particular army style, then lean into that and give us more than 3
Yeah, true.
missions if that's going to be the
I
case.
mean,
You can't give us 3 bland missions and then lock that way. So that's an argument against
here's
that being the case. I'm
yeah.
speculating
Here's the
because it's
reason it won't
absolute.
happen, right? Because GW aren't stupid, uh, or not planned on. Here's Howard off to play his game of 30k. He's agreed to play Stew. He's got on the bus to go down to, or got on the tube to go to Darksphere. He's, he's gone all the way to Darksphere. He's put his models down. He is sweating profusely because he's had to bring 5 or 6 different boxes because he doesn't know what army he's going to use. He's then had to place them in the store, blocking up one of the walkways through the store because he doesn't know what models he's going to use. Am I going to use my 2 Spartans today? Well, I better bring them just in case. Like, it doesn't work. 99% of people aren't going to play that way. Like, it
No way.
works really well for uh, for limited experiences. It's like picking your in Titanicus. It's like picking your weapons choices once you kind of have a vague idea of what you're going to be trying to achieve with your Titan. It's quite cool, but it just doesn't work most of the time. It's fine. Anyway,
Hmm.
should we look through some of these rules, the generic rules?
Yeah, let's
Just
do a little favour because then we can sort of
yeah,
draw a line
we're
under the
not going
rule
to
book
go
at least,
through
which
all
is
of
quite
them.
a reasonable milestone. I don't think we're going to touch the Tactica today.
No, absolutely not. Okie dokie. Where should we start? So lots of things have changed or are slightly different. Armor Bane makes lances penetrating hits, awesome. Assault vehicle allows you to charge without negatives coming out of that. Blast is a really interesting one. So blast roll to hit now. You must make a hit test for the attack. If you fail that hit test, then you scatter. So like Titanicus. Making blasts simpler to use most of the time.
That make it faster? Yes, I think that does make it
Yeah,
faster,
because you roll, and
actually,
if you hit, you just
because
place
then
it.
you're not.
You don't have to go over there with your scatter die
Yeah,
until
yeah,
you know that you failed to hit. Does it make it much faster?
yeah.
No. Does it make blasts a little bit better? Yes, because it's 1 in 3 to roll a
Mm,
hit with the
mm.
scatter die. Most of the time you're hitting on 3+ with like Space Marines and stuff. That's kind of cool. What else was in here that was interesting? Critical hit. Here we go. It's a new rule, isn't it? So critical hit X. If you whatever your score is, so 4, any rolls of 4, do a critical hit. Brilliant. It automatically inflicts a wound without any dice being rolled, counting as a roll of a 6 for any variable special rules that might be triggered by a wound test, and increases the damage characteristic of the hit by +1. So auto wounding rolls with a 6 on the wound roll, if that is relevant to anything, and +1 damage. That's pretty cool. Nice and simple combination of, say, things used in other games. Deep Strike we did. So you can only do 1 per turn. What is nice about Deep Strike is you declare you place a model 1 inch away. Once the first model has been placed, the remaining models in the unit must be placed within unit coherency with at least 1 model in the same unit and within 6 inches of the first model placed. Like, I like
Yeah,
that.
no
Like, there's
compromise.
no
Yeah.
stringing a line out of dudes here to try and, in this case, they can't charge, but to block off a unit or anything like, it stops shenanigans, which I like. I like
Sure.
a lot. What have we got? Eternal Warriors changed, hasn't it?
Yes. Now it's damage reduction because instant death has gone,
Yes. So
because you don't need it. Damage
yeah, damage
statistic.
reduction by the value in the bracket. So I think Lehman Russ is like damage reduction too. So a big gun's still going to do a lot of wounds, but a lot of the medium range guns are only going to do 1 wound. Excellent.
Duelist's Edge, I think we're going to see that's going to start to become more impactful than it was previously. That has an
On your
impact
focus
on
in the
focus
challenges,
rolls in
yeah.
challenges. Yeah, definitely a bonus to that. And similarly, Expendable. I've noticed through my strolls through the levers, as I've been reading them, Expendable appears quite a bit. I think it's quite a, as I say, it's part of that. The Expendable rule reduces the victory points
Obtained.
when a player scores less victory points when they
Yeah.
destroy a unit that has the expendable rule by value of X. That is one of the rules that makes me think they have deliberately made a design choice to lean more into that alternative way of winning games, not just killing your opponent.
Yes.
You're doing it by victory points. And it's another layer of kind of how victory points
Yeah,
engage with
because
something. And the number of units I've seen with it, the Iron Warriors particularly leaning into that, and then you suddenly think, I've just killed all of this and I've not scored any victory points, or I've only scored a handful compared to what I would normally
sure.
score. Suddenly becomes quite a different dynamic, which I think is an interesting part of their whole
Yeah, it
design
also
language.
affects First Strike and Slay the Warlord secondaries, but also interplays
Mm.
with Vanguard, which is the opposite, which is, I kill you in a certain circumstances, I'm getting more points. So,
Yeah,
plays into that, which is good. Where are we? What else have we got? Fear hasn't changed much, except it affects. So fear now affects leadership, willpower, cool, and intelligence as well, which is
it's all four.
pretty cool.
Mm.
Just trying to have a little look through hatreds back in there. Yep, lovely, lovely. Heedless, so units with a special rule cannot control or contest objective markers, which overrides any other rules. Nice. So you've got some fanatical models or whatever. They're going to be doing that. Infiltrate's an interesting one. So infiltrate has a value attached to it, whether that's 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. They're deployed at the same time as other units. The infiltrate special rule has an effect when deploying in its first battle round, and you get to anywhere that is either in the controller player's deployment zone or outside the player's deployment zone and is at least a number of inches equal to the highest X away from an enemy model. So X9 means you can't deploy within 9 inches of the enemy. But that's cool. I like it because there's varying kind of levels of what that can be, which is cool. Limited.
Officer of the
Well,
line, quite
line and
cool.
officer of the line. So line first.
Oh yeah,
So
true. Yeah.
when you're controlling an objective, we did mention it earlier, you get an additional points to X. So 10 models which have majority of line 3 hold an objective worth 1 victory point. That objective is now worth 4 victory points. It's also added to tactical strength of a model that has a special rule to determine its control of objectives. So if you're fighting over objectives or if you need something to stand on objectives, then line units have a real place. So this is where TAC Marines now earn their spot because TAC Marines are line 2, I think. So, well, 1 point objective going to a 3 point objective is pretty big for having 10 dudes stood on it. I think, it'll be interesting to see what gets line as we go through, but it's a good way to boost units that otherwise might not be taken. So officer of the line affects selecting your army. So you can have two, well, whichever rule it is. So like the Centurion is officer of the line 2, allows you to have a number of auxiliary detachments to that special rule instead of just one. So this is why Centurions are talked about, because at the moment there aren't that many which have officer of the line, are there?
No.
That's cool. There's lots of things like ordnance and heavy, which basically heavy gives you +1 to a characteristic depending on what so heavy X is actually a characteristic, so heavy damage or heavy attacks, whatever. You add 1 if you don't move. Ordnance is ×2 to that, so ordnance is heavier than heavy. So ordnance D would multiply the damage dealt by 2. A damage 3 weapon becomes a damage 6 weapon, which is pretty good.
As an example, that exact example you've given, that's the case of the
Is it?
Demolisher cannon, for
Nice.
example. Yeah, exactly. Which suddenly, I feel that's quite a
Yeah.
boost for Ordnance. Ordnance previously gave you benefits for penetrating armor, I think, and probably something against fortifications and similar. I feel that rule, when applied to certain weapons, and I haven't gone through all of them yet, but I know I was aware of the Demolisher as one of them. That's quite significant. Jumping from 3 to 6 means you could be instantly killing certain vehicles with that suddenly quite quickly. Even more so than heavy. And heavy's not bad, but and I also think it gives them quite a bit of space to say, well, that could affect damage. It could affect strength. There's some interesting mechanics there to be played with. Generally, I've seen it that ordnance almost always affects damage, but I'm sure it will. I mean, the Dreadhammer, the big siege cannon on the Typhon, is Ordnance D, same as the Demolisher on the Vindicator. So I'm sure we'll see some versions of that affecting some other stat, but quite cool, I think. I quite like that as a change. I think that brings in weapons that perhaps would have been overlooked previously.
Absolutely. Shred's an interesting one. So Shred has now given a value again, and if you roll that value when rolling to wound, you get the damage characteristic goes up by 1 rather than the rerolls. So don't seem to be many rerolls in the game.
I know. I think they've very heavily
Which
removed
is,
those because there's no twin link.
yeah, because rerolls not only makes things go slightly longer, it also makes things so much more reliable that like rerolls is king. Like Dark Elves were good in Warhammer Fantasy because they had rerolls everywhere. Like it is it just means you get many fewer kind of really bad results. Like it's not even the good result;
Yeah.
it's avoiding the bad result a lot of the time. So
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
that's pretty cool. Um, Everything else, I say Vanguard, you're getting extra. Uh, the last causes the last model and enemy units controlling it, contesting objective to be removed as a casualty. You're getting some extra VPs, which is pretty cool. And then they got the psychic disciplines. I haven't really looked through the psychic. I must admit I don't like the way the psychic powers are written out. It just looks like there's a lot, and most of the time you can ignore the top bit because it tells you at the end.
It's very what's interesting with the disciplines, like I have read through them, albeit briefly, partly because I was wondering how it played with Thousand Suns, and what was interesting with them, it's got that approach where you have like a weapon and
Yeah,
a power typically, but not always. And also, there tends to be kind of a special rule associated with it. So it's not just the weapon and the power, or in some cases, pyromancy, for example, is just two weapons. It's not a power. Telekinesis is only. Oh no, it's a weapon and a power as well. But in addition to that, the the bearer or the model that's been given that discipline gets given some specific special
yes.
rules. So the in pyromancy it gets explodes 4+, as well as access to those powers. I thought that was quite cool. There's another one where it's
Biomancy, you get impact hits.
thaumaturgy was I thought was quite cool because you get the
Oh,
hatred
nice.
psychers rule, and I like, oh, that's quite fun. And you get a specific that one you get a specific reaction, a special type of reaction that you can use. And I'm like, okay, that's quite cool. It's not only psychic weapons and powers that you get from this; you also get special rules. So that was a nice little touch. But it's quite straightforward in that there's not a lot to it. It's not like I've got 6 powers to choose
It's
from
not
under
much
the
different to last edition,
biomancy.
is it really?
Exactly. It's still got that slightly trimmed down, slightly more efficient version of it, but I thought the addition of the special rule was quite fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, telepathy causes fear. Right, nice.
Yeah.
Um, Especially when you've got a weapon that is only 18-inch range and can cause stun. So you're affecting that ability to pass that stun test as well, which is super cool.
Biomancy looking pretty
Oh yeah,
spicy.
+2
I think
strength and
we're going to
toughness.
see.
I must admit, as a Wolves player, that looks quite cool.
Well,
Armor
and the
Bane and
weapon, the
Force.
biomantic
Oof.
slam. Yeah. Yeah. So initiative -3, fair enough. Strength 12, AP 2, 2 damage, armor
And
bane,
Force. Yeah.
force damage. Yeah, force damage. So you can double it to you can
So
double the damage up to 4. Armor bane,
only
and
one
strength
attack.
12, AP
So you got to hit with it.
3.
But yeah, it's cool. It's an option, isn't it? And the
Yeah.
ability to be like make your whole unit +2 strength and toughness rather than firing a volley shot appeals to me, frankly. Volley
Yes.
attack. Cool. Just before we move on, so lots of leaks have come out, and we haven't touched the libers yet. But where you had an issue with not being able to take an all drop assault army, I think it feeds into the lead back, like the army lists and the units themselves have all been stripped back. The base power level of the game has been stripped down. The options available have been stripped down as well. And in essence, that isn't a major issue. We need to be looking at this game from a different starting point compared to old editions. What it does mean is things like, I've been on a couple of sites. Obviously, I'm on Spacewall sites. Farragut Terminators. I don't think anyone's got Farragut Terminators that are currently legal in, or will be legal in 3.0 because no one built them that way. So there are
Mm.
units that are having to be repurposed into other units or put aside, or people think that's going to happen. We haven't had the legends, whatever they're called again. We haven't had that.
Yeah, Legacies
Legacies,
PDF.
that's
Yeah.
right. So we haven't had that. So there are lots of other things. There's a distinct lack of bikes within like character options. Character options themselves have been stripped back a bit. I quite like the fact that you've got a generic table to buy. Like, so not every person's page is like hideously long with all their options, but I think there are valid concerns within that, and yours plays into it a little bit. If you love Heresy, if you love Blood Angels, and you love deep striking your army, and even if it doesn't do very good, you're going to keep doing it. You want to keep doing it. You may have your one army might be a Blood Angels army that is all Assault Marines or jump pack
Mhm.
troops and drop pods, and you might be able to play it, but it might not. But it might be a struggle. You might have to go out and buy more models. You might have to repurpose. You might have to change weapons choices on all those models. I think it's a fair criticism or a valid point to make that it's disappointing that the army you want to play, which is thematic, which has been within the game for the best part of 12 years, is now not available for you to play on release of a game. And, Drop Assault is iconic. Spear of the tip, like,
Well, quite. That's probably why that bothers me. But I mean, as you say, there's plenty of others where there were options. I mean, Blood Angels and Imperial Fists players, particularly, where you could have whole units of assault cannons. You could make that quite comfortably without too much difficulty with Games Workshop specific pieces. Now, I'm slightly tempered somewhat by units because I feel like units like that, for example, may end up in the legacies. I'm kind of clutching at straws
oh, well,
there because I wonder if that will be. There are obvious other units that were already in legacies PDFs will stay there. Iron Havocs type
there's,
thing or whatever. A specific war gear choice, maybe consoles that were, as you say, because I think that's a glaring omission. Is I can't take a librarian with a jump pack
mm,
right now. That's the sort of thing I could see going into the legacies that wasn't there before. Fair enough.
I can't take
Um,
a
where I
Wolfrey.
think it is a problem is the unit composition. I think it's entirely feasible that someone's got, 5, 6, 8 drop pods, but you have no use at all at the moment, and no suggestion that you ever will for
And
more than
that's
3.
the problem, right? Is like I think eventually we will be able to take drop pod armies. Uh, uh,
It would be insane not
yes,
to, but
the fact they haven't
communicate.
communicated that, and I think we haven't talked here about, and we're not going to this time, about the roundtable discussions they had on Warcom. I've only read the first one fully, but it's brilliant. Like, it's great to see
It's
Neil
really good.
talk because Neil's so quiet um, for years in Heresy. Uh, but to get a slight insight, slight understanding goes a long way. It like compared to a lot of articles that come out on Warcom, those kind of articles do a lot to build bridges, to give a bit of insight and understanding into what's happening. Yes, they get misconstrued, but things like Andy saying that a lot of the legacy units are going to need you to convert. Like we're not going to have
Mm.
those specific loadouts or types of models available. So there is room in this hobby to do that. Like where actually 40k in Age of Sigmar, you're buying the models as is, and that's part of the problem with you talk about units not being right. Some of the models, some of the units that GW sell as a complete unit aren't necessarily legal as it stands. Uh, that could change when legacies come out, and I'm sure as we move forwards, a lot of these things are going to get put back in. Like you have to accept a certain amount of it stripped back. However, it'd be nice to know kind of that it's coming. Like, don't worry too much, because people get worked up and they work themselves up because again we're in a period where we're not allowed to talk about this. I can't jump into some of the leaks chats because I don't want to reveal something that I can't reveal. So like, why am I going to do that? But
Mm.
it's clear that now I've seen people. Oh, Kurz has been nerfed. Oh, Rust has been nerfed. Oh, this has been nerfed. It's like, well, they've all been nerfed. So, what are you comparing it to? Because you can't compare it to last edition. Does Rust work how Rust should work? That's a different question. Like, I don't care if he gets different rules, just as long as he works the way he works. I want name a unit. I want them to work in the way they should work. I'm not that bothered by how you get to that point. Doesn't matter if a specific rule's changed. Legion traits like Raven Guard are broken compared to Space Wolves is rubbish. Raven Guard are broken. Well, Raven Guard's trait is probably more powerful than Space Wolves one. You're right. Is the rest of their makeup as strong as the Space Wolves one? I don't know. I haven't looked at it, but I don't mind there being a differentiation between the traits if the reactions are balanced the other way and the equipment they can have and the options they can have is slightly different. Then if Raven Guard, cool, you don't shoot them very well, you still have to come forward to get on an objective. And if I can charge you without you being able to shoot me, and I'm better at you in combat, then does that even it up? Don't know. Maybe not. Um, there's a lot. There's a lot of ways to balance different things without them being, black versus white chess pieces. Whether that's happened or not, that's a different question. It's too early to tell. Like, how many times have you seen people say, "Oh, write off units"? Mechanicum got written off last edition. Turns out there was a few things you could do with Mechanicum. They were quite powerful. Units get written off all the time, or things, and they get used. But I think it's legitimate to be concerned when things like drop assault, I say, is not available as it stands. When you might only have 3,000 points of models that you cannot play with because you've specifically chosen a style of army that is now no longer viable. All the Space Wolf players, like, you can't take bolt guns and pistols and chainswords on models and cool, whatever. If you're playing on my table and you say, oh yeah, these models have got bolt pistols, but they don't actually have bolt pistols, I don't care. Fine, not a problem. If for a few months you have to say, well, I mean, it always used to be a chainsaw used to be able to be just a hand weapon. If you've got chainsaws on a unit that can't have chainswords anymore, cool, it's got a hand weapon. That's fine. We can work through that. Now, when you've got people who've taken all lightning claws when they're not allowed lightning claws on the Terminators or something like crazy like that, it's a bit trickier. People don't want to have to go out and spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds and have models they've owned for years become invalidated like that. And it doesn't seem that Heresy should do that.
I think it's quite no, and it feels like it's quite a lot of
Mm.
things have been affected like that. I do think there's quite a lot of units are going to be missing things that are just flat out not available anymore. It's not
No,
one or two
but it's
here and there. It's not sort of ancient and really obscure things that were. It's like, oh no, there's quite a lot of this, and it's not limited even to things like, oh, there are some case where the resin kits had options and now they're being presented as in the rules that they don't. It's things that were entirely possible to assemble
the
from
basics.
that
Yeah,
weren't sold as a kit, but were sold as like an upgrade combined with the standard kit is no longer a thing. There is character types as we're talking about. I just think that's a strange level of restriction to have deployed with no mention of it, and I would have thought they had quite a few opportunities with the amount of coverage via their various channels, principally Warcom, to have at least given people an indication of that. Like you say, there's ways you can address it. There's things like the what was it, the Liber Panoptica, and that group that did that in the last edition, in the second edition of the game. They'll do that, but of course they're fan versions, so a lot of people can take issue with that.
I kind of like. I've seen I've seen a little bit written about oh yeah, it's just a money grab from GW, blah blah blah. Well, like for the crew that write the rules, it's not a money grab. Like they're not grabbing money from you to do this. So, I'm pretty sure if you would be able to sit down with the rules writers and say, we really want heresy to feel like heresy, they agree with you. I, for whatever reason, you look at a chaplain, right, at the moment.
Yeah, I thought the same. He stood
Chaplain
out to me
has no
as well.
rules. It doesn't do anything.
No.
Literally, it's just a dude.
Well, I thought the same. The only thing he does have, is that where they've captured it, is they've increased his cool.
Cool, right?
Yeah, quite. Yeah,
It's
yeah. I grant you.
unless the
Yeah.
Crozius Arcanum does, which I haven't looked up. Like unless it,
No, it's crazy. Kind of a weapon,
but
surely,
it's also a
unless
badge
it's
of
like the
honor, isn't it?
Narcisium. Yeah, but what I mean is, I don't think it's got any additional rules, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, right. I don't
Maybe I'm
think it
wrong.
has either. Right, but no, I
No.
can't see anything. Because they'd probably be within that. So yeah, it's like, why are you taking one of them? Oh, I need some extra cool in this specific unit. Like, like
And it's only plus one, by the way. It's only one higher than
there's
everyone else.
there's
It's not
ways of doing
exactly,
that with other things.
it's a pretty niche thing. The Crozius Arcanum is just
There
a
we go.
power.
So
It's
it
like a
doesn't.
power. It's a power. It's a power
There we
move.
go. So why is anyone ever taking him? Like, you know, it's obviously this is not a finished article, right? Like the army list is not finished. It's not the final beast. It's not quite index, but it's not there. I'd be amazed if it was. And really,
And I just think there's been a lack of
communication. This is
communication,
GW's biggest.
which is something. It's a something we often put to GW and different wings of GW. What I think makes that slightly harder to swallow this on this occasion is the fact that they've communicated so much about the new edition of Heresy. There's been
Ah,
so many articles and so
I
many.
remember.
There would have been an opportunity to
God,
do
must be
this.
8 or 9 years ago. A GW staff member next to me at an event, and I can't remember what we were talking about, but it might have been heresy, and saying, it is nice that we finally got one of these, but could we get some more? And they were like, come on, you got your article, and I'm like, I did, and it's the bare minimum. Like, I don't think this is
Yeah,
necessarily
exactly. Yeah.
bare minimum, but I think it could, like you say, come out, let us know that okay. I mean, we know we're going to get Legion specific books going down. We know we're getting more PDFs coming. They did put out the digital release schedule for the next few months. Brilliant. Thank you.
I applaud all of that, and I'm here for it. But I
This
mean, saying that a Legion
is
book is
not.
coming,
Yeah.
well, it's 18 legions. Are you going to put multiple legions in these small, 48-page books? Possibly not. And if you do,
It's a lot.
that might make the content of each legion pretty light. So if you're doing 18 books, how long is it? 2 years that I need to wait for my legion? Because it could be is that you're not going to, understandably, not going to stay a release process. And when you've got units entirely missing or units that were perfectly legal, not obscure units either. I mean, the omission of destroyers fairly obvious. They're going to be in the legacies PDF, but it's for people who built destroyer companies. I mean, the Ultramarines page has even got a Nemesis destroyer as an example.
Yeah, and there's
Yeah, as an example page scheme. You're like, make some choices, guys. I mean, there's ways of doing this, and it's just I'm surprised actually how much of that there is, and I kind of get it where people are getting a bit fidgety about it
I think they
over
thought they
certain
were
things where they've
getting
customized.
that. I think they thought they were getting like the full thing, and expectations
Mm.
weren't tempered in that respect. What I was going to say, I can't really remember. But yeah, I mean, we don't even know if we're on a 3-year cycle, so and they're not going to tell us that. That's understandable. And there's, flip a coin, frankly. Like, it doesn't feel like we need a 3-year cycle because it's not a competitive game in that respect. But
No.
and if we are, I strongly suspect you won't be changing edition style like it would be tweaked this if they do it. You know what? I don't mind buying a rule book every 3 years. I don't really mind that, just as long as it's a rule book and not 5 books because I play 3 different armies. That kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or like with it. I mean, even just going right.
Oh,
Okay, I've got what is it? It's 4 libers are coming out
I'm not buying them
simultaneously.
all.
As you say, it would probably be 5. So yeah, you think that's a
It- it-
lot. 'Cause even if you're not playing the armies, you kind of want to know what you're up
yeah,
against potentially. So yeah, like that's quite an investment that you're
and we have.
dropping. I mean, it's certainly make and it's now making the case for buying physical books considerably
Well,
less. I
if they
mean,
do digital books,
having the book and going to put a load in the bin is like
if they
right.
do digital books,
I thought they'd said they
maybe they
would,
did.
but I
I thought
could
there
be
was
wrong.
some question mark over whether the current books
Yeah,
are
you might
actually
be.
going to be digital rather than just the digital content that they're putting out alongside it.
Mm,
Um, you're right. You know, I don't have the money to go out and drop all the levers at the moment. You know, the PDF we've got won't be accessible to us, uh, you know, that much longer. So I'm going to have to go out and buy bit by bit as I want. Fine, I know that is what it is. I'm not complaining, but it's, you know, it's money that doesn't get spent on updating my army. Um, yeah, but yeah, I think there are valid concerns. I think there are aspects of the game that I need to try to see how I feel about them. Um, I like, I think I like the base rules. I think the base rule
mm,
set is a positive for me. The scenarios are. I'm hoping that as a community we move towards 5 turns minimum on that. I know some people are big
mm,
fans of 4 turns, and I just not. And then I hope that GW can, like, you know, sort out this issue. I want to see, you know, my roots are in black books. My roots are First Day Heresy. It's a narrative game. You know, the Cerberus was never any good. And frankly, it didn't matter because Alan Bly liked using his. Like, you know,
mm.
I like that aspect of it to a point. But yeah, you know, give me a reason to take a chaplain, you know, because there is no
Yeah,
reason
yeah.
to take a chaplain. But hey, and again, as I say, there's not a single character on a bike. So, you know, like, do they sell characters on bikes? No. Is that the reason they're not in thingy? Maybe. There's a big push for plastic. Maybe we're going to get a mass of plastic coming. It could happen, you know, and there's going to be like releases alongside it.
Mm,
There's it, as you say, I think the biggest thing is GW's communication has always been patchy. Their relationship with their audience in that respect has always been patchy. Not the designers, not the people within the company. Like this comes from up top. You know, their rules about what they do and how they do it uh, are draconian. Frankly, they don't seem to trust. And it's been maybe slightly over negative, but they don't. They never seem to be too sure to trust outside sources or themselves to be able to talk to us in a not in a
mm.
completely open way, but in a slightly open way. They're always very reticent to open up. Um, who knows if that will change going forwards? The problem is it's working. Like financially, it's working. So even if we saw a change at the top, would that change? Hmm, not so sure. Because why would you want to rock the boat too much? Because your shareholders won't want
Mm.
you to rock the boat too much. That's for sure. But overall, I want to play the game. You know, I want to get my walls out.
Entirely. Yeah, I think that it's say that I kind of agree with the core engine of the
Mm.
game, and I included that the army composition thing. Um,
Which,
I think it's in a very
and
positive place. I just
that's
think
the way around you want it, right? Because this core book is here for a bit. and they can work on the other bits, I think, slightly easier to adjust, release a PDF that does a few things, gives a few extra rules here and there as required. That kind of
I agree with that to a degree. I think they are somewhat reluctant to do that, particularly with something as hefty as the libers tend to be. I think
Well,
they're slightly more tome-like
did you see
in
the
there,
FAQ
but you're
for
right, it will.
Old
It'll
World?
I just think it'll
They
no.
basically
And I heard
changed
that
the way the Old World
they said
played.
that was
Like I haven't looked
right.
into it
Okay.
fully, but people are like, "Oh, this changes everything." So, like, literally, people are saying,
And to be fair, Legions Imperialis had
"Yeah,
something similar, but it was well over a year. I think it was nearly
sure,
what was it, a year and a half after the game was out. Not
nah."
ideal. Now, vastly more people I've heard talk about this, talk about heresy in general, say that they would much rather have a stable rule set and just live with problems with it than have constant updates every 6 months. That's a route for a different game system, in their opinion, and that seems to be quite a predominant. That's quite a repeated viewpoint, and fair enough. So yes, you're right. That is the case, but I think it would be quite some time. And given the nature of some of these, it's just a shame that it's not there already. In the case of sort of various levels of either customization or options, particularly when they've gone down the route of saying, "Oh, you can now do whatever you like with your army." You're like, well, yeah,
I can choose all the units I don't want.
you can't do it.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I think if you've got the core rules set, then it's much easier for the independent community to play around with the units, because it's very easy to say, okay, cool, Varagir have access to these 3 units, and they've already provided a points level for them. That's fine. That's cool. So I think that kind of thing
mm.
is fine, and even to make up their own auxiliary detachments. There's lots of scope there, even as you move forward and you just want to do something specific for your campaign gaming. Anyway, we chat a while. It is late. We're going to put this episode out, and we're going to try and record again soon, and maybe look through the levers. Maybe when the internet's done its thing as well, we can work out like kind of what are the major issues and what's cool, frankly.
Yeah. We're getting a flavour of that, but that's perhaps people just grabbing snippets right now. I agree. I think it's been a good conversation. I've enjoyed this and enjoyed looking into this, and I look forward to us actually getting some
Yes,
games in.
indeed. Roll on some gaming. Awesome stuff. Cheers, Howard.
Good night, man.
Congratulations, you've made it to the end of another episode of the Imperial Truth Podcast. Bit of a slightly different episode than normal. For those who are listening maybe for the first time, we do normally have the little bit of chat beforehand. We're quite an old school podcast like that. We talk about what we've been up to and what news is going on. Obviously, the news is all new third edition anyway, but we normally do all that. We're normally a little bit more rambling and go off on quite a few more tangents. Maybe you picked that up, but we tried to keep it mainly to the rules this time. Now, I'm recording this just last minute as lots of people have put out their information already. There's lots of people looking at the libers, lots of from what I understand, good content. Haven't had a chance to look at it yet. Been busy all day. We were going to kind of rush out our libers thing like hot on the heels of this one. I think what we might do is leave it a little bit. There's lots of content out there already. We can add to that after a little bit more time digesting it, having a look through it. Maybe even once it'll be quite tight time wise, but maybe even once all the PDFs are out. We'll whether we can do that and have time to digest it or not, I'm not sure. So we're going to kind of do our thing on that one, and we've got some other content for the next episode as well. Hopefully, got a date set up for a chat with some people next in the middle of the week. So fingers crossed we can add that into what we're doing. And then moving on from there, there's going to be lots of third ed content. Hopefully, it's normally a bit of a lull once the book's out, but we'll hopefully get some more models and other things like that. We've got a preview coming up very soon as well, so that has got Horus Heresy on it, so we can look at that and we can talk about what's going on, what's been happening. So that that will all come over the next few episodes as we build up to episode 200, which is kind of exciting. Been doing this a fairly long time now. I've also got authors to get hold of and things like that. We had Dan. I was hoping to carry on. Had a date with one author and we missed it, and then they were busy. So trying to get that going as well, because we want to still do all that. We want to encompass all aspects of the heresy and what we're doing with that. And I have an event coming up as well. So now we got all the books. Now people are going to be playing games. I'm going to have to write how this event's going to work in third edition, because it will be in third edition. It's a really cool event. I will try and get the links out soon for everyone. I mean, they are out there. I think they're on the events page, and yeah, but I'll share them on the social media coming up soon as well. As I say, bare bones of a pack are out without the details of what we're going to do around the gaming, because we didn't know, frankly. Awesome. So if you are new particularly, or if you've been following us a long time, you've probably heard me say this a lot of times. If you enjoy the show, there are lots of ways to support us, and some of them involve very little effort at all. You can like the show, rate the show on your podcatcher of choice, whether iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, whatever you listen to, whichever podcast app you use. You can YouTube. We're on YouTube. These are put on YouTube. There are no videos that go with it in terms of footage of us, which is always a good thing. But we are on there. So if you like listening via YouTube, you can do that as well. If you want to go a stage further than that, you can tell your friends that you tried us and you found us interesting, or what have you. Brilliant. Outspread the word. You follow us on our social medias. We'll run through them in a minute. You can use our links for Element Games. We also have a link with Battle Bling for your 3D printed, particularly Titan bits and pieces. But I think there's name plates for bases and things like that on there as well. Doing this while it's really warm, so my brain's a bit overheating at the moment. Stuck in the front room where it's just been cooking all day. And then we have the extreme level for people who really do think we deserve, strange way of saying it, who really want to give something back to the podcast. We do have a Patreon. We don't put any extra content on there. We don't lock prizes behind it. We don't. We don't do anything like that. We don't have FAQ only for Patreons. Anything like that is literally a tip jar. If you feel like you've had something from the show and you want to support us in a way as a thank you, then you can choose to support us on Patreon from as little as, I think it's 99 cents, a dollar. So you can do that. As I say, nothing comes from that in terms of extra content. We have a number of people who, are very kind of proud to say, actually believe that our content is worth a dollar or what have you. Over the time, some people have given us even more, and we do truly appreciate that, and it helps pay for the hosting and all that kind of stuff. There's some equipment updates I need to do. Had my headphones for a very long time, and they are just starting to fall apart. That kind of thing. So, yeah. But if you just want to say you liked our show, absolutely brilliant, and that's wonderful, and thank you for that. We don't expect anything more than that from anyone. Okay, move on from that rubbish. What else was I going to talk about? I'm sure there was some other stuff I was going to talk about. Yes, there were. If you have any ideas for show topics, please feel free to send them in. Had one from Andrew, which we couldn't make work in time for when we wanted to do it, but it's something that will be as pertinent a month down the line for sure. So, Andrew, we will be getting back to you on that one. But yeah, show topics, questions, about the game, about the lore, about events, anything to do with heresy, really. Particularly if you're new, I feel like there are times when new people don't want to ask questions because they're seen to be too simple. And regularly do I find that people who ask these kind of questions sometimes hit on something that veteran gamers don't know because it's not something that's come up, or it's an edge case, or it's a slightly different way of looking at things. In fact, I had a friend who's just got into cricket. Shout out to James, who asked me a question about cricket results, and I was confidently gave an answer and immediately thought, actually, is the fourth part of that answer technically correct? Turns out I was wrong. So sometimes it's really helpful as veteran gamers to answer very simple questions, particularly around edition changes. We talked in this episode about edition bleed, and I definitely have almost every edition skipped past certain parts of the book because there's a wall of text and it's 99.9% the same as it's always been. However, that little one word change means that something you take for granted doesn't actually happen that way. And sometimes it's the new player who points it out because they've read the book in a very different way to you. So we appreciate that kind of thing. So email them in greg@theimperialtruth.com, on X/Twitter, imperial_truth, or at Child of Fang. On Facebook, you can search for the Imperial Truth. There's a page and a group. The group is not very active, but the page is where we post up a few things. Again, we're not going to be bombarding your Facebook feed. Don't worry about that. Instagram at Child of Fang. So you can follow us on all of that, and appreciate anyone who does do so. This is a typically rambly outro, I feel, but I think it's good sometimes just to cover all the bases. As I say, if you're new and you're listening to us for the first time, welcome. If you're new to Heresy, particularly, welcome even more. This game is cool. It's generally played a slightly different way to all the other GW games. I mean, if you listen this far, you'll probably appreciate that I have moved away a little bit from tournament gaming and competitive gaming in that respect, and Heresy has never quite been those. There's been some people who have done it, and you can do it, but the Heresy setting in general leads to a slightly more relaxed, most of the time, slightly more relaxed approach, certainly from organisers. Whether all the players buy in, your mileage may vary. But there we go. I think that's done for now. We will see you pretty soon with the next episode. And we release, for those who are new, we do one a month. We try and release it on the first of the month. I reckon we've probably got a 30% hit rate. Maybe even worse than that. Who knows? But one early in the month usually, unless there's something like this and we push it back. But Howard and I will be heresying. He'll be doing more painting than I, that's for sure. But we'll be reading and heresying and eventing and everything else. So until next time, you have been listening to The Imperial Truth.